So tell us about you.
So, my name is Adrian Allen. I have been in law enforcement for 20 years. Been teaching firearms, tactics, use of force, all sorts of related things like that, self-defense for over 15 years, to both law enforcement and to private citizens. I run a company called Critical Impact Group where I do, again, law enforcement training, firearms training, use of force training, things like that for both private citizens and law enforcement officers. And then also part of my job or some of the consulting work I do with that too is also case analysis and expert witness services for defense attorneys. So I'm not just doing the cop thing too. I'm interested in this topic, use of force and self-defense and firearms related things like that as well. So I work on both sides. Had some really good cases I worked this year for a defense attorney out of Milwaukee. We won a self-defense case, work I did doing some video analysis on another shooting, wound up exonerating a defendant who'd been in jail for 1.5 years. So, for me, when I look at these things, I find the topic interesting, and I try to, approach my law enforcement investigations as well as these with just a very open mind, looking for really the truth, unbiased kind of fashion.
So you've also had, and we don't have to get into it, but you've had personal experience with like use of force back on the job and stuff. Is that something you're okay talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been involved in the shooting myself. I've been involved in, of course, many use of force incidents. So I have firsthand experience with that. I have, of course, firsthand experience investigating, or not so much investigating from a investigative standpoint, but investigating and analyzing from a training standpoint, right? So, when I've looked at thousands of videos of officer-involved shootings, analyzed hundreds and hundreds of them in order to then try to train police officers how to be safer, how to be more effective, how to win when they have to fight. And of course, if at all possible, how to avoid fighting, in the first place, right? Because the best way to win a fight is not have to fight at all, right? So,
spoiler alert: you and I disagree about the shooting that happened in Minneapolis, and it was the ICE agent, Jonathan Ross, I believe his name was, and the lady who got shot is Renee
Good, I believe. Yeah. To me, I think the disagreement that I've had or seen or talked with people who feel differently about this than me comes down to whether or not they believe his actions were reasonable and whether or not he had the ability to do things other than shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can just kind of summarize my position on this.
Please, absolutely.
Obviously it's tragic. I think it's horrible. When I first looked at the video, my first reaction was, ooh, like that's not good. That doesn't look good, right? Yeah. However, as I started looking into it and breaking things down and analyzing it kind of from my professional experience and training and stuff like that.
Which again, you're not the armchair Instagram warrior. Like, you do this professionally for money.
Yeah, and I do it for both sides, right? I've done it to train police officers, and I've done it for defense attorneys too. As I look at that, I think it's, and something we can probably get into, is there's a difference when we look at justification for use of force between right and reasonable. Right? Yep. Right as in being correct, like you had to do this was necessity, versus in the moment it was reasonable for you to believe you needed to, and you acted, as you thought you needed to.
Absolutely.
So that's where I kind of differentiate. After looking at this over and over again, basically, if I could summarize my position, it's that in hindsight, I don't think he needed to shoot. However, I believe that it was reasonable for him to believe he did. That's a very nuanced thing that I think a lot of people struggle to understand, but that is how our law on when it comes to use of force, as you know, is written. So
I think that's where this episode or podcast or whatever is going to be especially beneficial. Like, I will say that we are slicing the onion super thin, and that's where you and I disagree. It's over such many. I suspect viewers will come away from this saying they agreed so much, how could they come to different conclusions?
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, that'd be a good.
So,
Yeah.
I feel like it's important to go over this. This is hopefully it can be seen on the screen, and if not, I'll magnify it in post. But this is essentially a poster that has been circulated on Facebook, and I'll tell you, as a liberal who really dislikes what's being done with ICE, I wish it were true. It is not, and I'm happy to explain why. So it says ICE, what they can and cannot do, not a police force. ICE is an immigration agency, not general law enforcement. Like, this is tricky. They aren't general law enforcement. They have a particular mission, right? But they're law enforcement in terms of, like, I'm not going to bury the lead here. There is 8 U.S.C. 1357 describes what powers ICE has without a warrant. And it talks about the circumstances under which they can arrest people. So we're looking at sub A, sub 5, A, and B. So ICE agents, including deportation officers, which Jonathan Ross was, and apparently he's fairly established, well-trained. Like, I only today saw his resume. It doesn't change my analysis.
Sure.
But, like, the dude's got a CV.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
So, they're empowered to make arrests, A, for any offense against the United States if the offense is committed in the officer's presence. And I take that to mean any federal offense. So a violation of the U.S. code, a violation of any federal law. Alternatively, they can arrest a person. This includes U.S. citizens, right? They can arrest a person for any felony under any of the laws of the United States if the officer has reasonable grounds to believe that the person has committed that felony, and reasonable grounds is less than probable cause, like it's just reason to believe, and they think that the person is likely to flee before they can get a warrant. So when we go back to this poster, I think that there's nuanced ways in which some aspects of it are true, but this is really dangerous because I think that when people like Renee Good see that something like this, if they were to take it as gospel, it's very misleading and it could get them hurt, right? So in terms of detention rules, I mean, when I see detention, I think of arrest, which I just read, right? So it's not just reasonable suspicion of being undocumented or a valid immigration warrant. They say cannot detain U.S. citizens. That is bullshit. That is just untrue. Like, I just read the U.S. code that flat out says they can, right? Use of firearms, you could speak more to. Like, I think mostly we're only going to draw our guns, cop or not, when there's immediate threat. But, like, that's not the only reason folks get to draw their guns.
Yeah, I would say I would go a little bit beyond that immediate threat. When it's immediate threat, it's like that's when you can shoot, an imminent threat. If we believe that is possible, if that is likely, right, police officers are going to have their guns out early, okay, before we get to that point. You can threaten someone with deadly force at a point where you may not actually be quite authorized to pull the trigger, right? So, it doesn't take a lot for them to articulate that they believe there's a higher danger to draw.
The other part that is frustrating and angers me about this is bystanders. ICE has no authority over U.S. citizens, people filming or passing by. Like, look, you have your First Amendment rights. ICE apparently has been telling people they can't film, and they're wrong, right?
Incorrect.
But ICE can arrest U.S. citizens, man. Like, it was in researching this case, I've been wondering for months, because frankly, I regard them as mall cops, right?
Sure.
They've got this specific, the warrants that they're running about with, the administrative warrants, aren't signed by an actual judge, an Article 3 judge. They're signed by essentially a supervisor with Homeland Security, right? So I was really curious about their arrest authority, because that's what it comes down to. And as it turns out, they have it. I'm not happy about it, but that's the fact. And this is dangerous misinformation. So I feel like I'd be remiss if we didn't get that out of the way. Now, I am going to argue that we can get more narrow. We're going to get into the jury instructions, the reasonableness,
Sure.
etc. There's a code of federal regulations that talks about things an ICE officer has to do when he's performing an arrest under the statute, and I'm going to argue that they didn't.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But you can probably speak more to the nuances of when we get to that point, what happens when an officer isn't behaving perfectly.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not the crux of my argument. Like, my position is still the same. I just happened to discover this.
Yep.
So we should talk about
and
it.
foreshadowing a little bit, right? Some of these things that we're talking about here, they may not, like when an officer isn't acting exactly as they're supposed to be appropriately per their policy, right? That could generally be more of like a civil, lawsuit type of civil action as opposed to a criminal, charging anything. So
Yes, and that's 42 U.S.C. 1983, which allows you to sue the cops or whoever, right? When they do something wrong in their official capacity, like they deny you of a civil right. And there's all different sorts of manifestations of it, but usually happens when someone gets shot by a cop.
Sure.
And I don't want to speak for you. I think your position would be, you're not going to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did it wrong in a criminal context, but in a civil context where there's a lesser burden, you could show by a preponderance of the evidence or a greater weight of credible evidence, so like he didn't follow his training. Yeah. So that's different to you. How does that distinction matter?
Again, I think it comes down to put it in layman's terms, again, the reasonableness versus being right. I feel that I believe that in the civil arena, because of the lower burden of proof, things like whether something was necessary or not, my experience, I think juries are more likely to kind of just think that way, even though that's not really how the law is codified. I think just simply because that burden of proof is a little bit lower. They just simply have to show that, more likely than not, this officer didn't follow some of his training, or believe that, he had other options that he should have known about. Again, the criminal side, maybe we can't prove that he knew that or should have known that beyond a reasonable doubt, but, when basically we're looking for a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not, I just think there's a little bit more room for interpretation and argument,
No, and that's great foreshadowing. Like, I'll get to it when we get to it, but my argument is, like, there's going to be a lot around whether it was necessary and how that works vis-a-vis, was there any other option?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Basically, the one that I spend most of the time examining is this view from behind the car, because it just shows the positioning probably the best, when the car is moving forward, backwards, and what a lot of, I think, my analysis is going to come down to is I've timestamped things, and we can look at, how long was the officer in different positions, and would they have had time to react, and their decision-making process and things like that. Because I think ultimately, right, when we're looking at this reasonable person standard, one of the things I think that we have to kind of acknowledge is that you can't expect a person to exceed the limits of human performance.
Right.
Right. So if it takes, if we have evidence, if we have science that says it takes someone, so much time to process information and make a decision, it's not reasonable for us to expect them to be able to do it faster than that set time and things like
Absolutely.
that. We can talk about vision, and I do want to talk a little bit about the decision-making process as well, just so people have an understanding of, it's going to ultimately come down to, like, one of the big questions is, why didn't he just step to the right?
Yeah, right.
And in hindsight, I look at that and I put myself in that position and I'm like, I would like to think I would have stepped to the right, but understanding how people make decisions under stress, I can also, and it's a scary thing to self-realize that it's possible that I wouldn't have. It's possible that in that moment I would have done the same thing, and I can understand why that's a possibility. So,
Well, let's get into it, man. If you want to do the presentation, and what we're seeing right there is, I think, here's Agent Ross, and then here's Ms. Good's wife.
Yep.
And then Mrs. Good, I guess, is in the car.
Yep.
And remind me, I don't remember where this vehicle came from.
I believe this is an ICE vehicle, one of the other ICE vehicles, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to watch maybe if we see lights or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it decides it's stopped there for a bit and then it goes around.
You know, can we just briefly address the, before this video happened,
Yep.
I understand that there's some argument. I saw a video from like a third floor
Yes.
dude with a loud dog,
Yep.
deep voice dog, who apparently shows Ms. Good blocking traffic for about, utterly blocking, completely blocking
About
traffic
3
for
minutes.
about 3 minutes.
Yep. Yep.
I don't know that that's the case, but it certainly looked on video to me
Yes.
like she was doing it. But at this point, she has backed up a bit and now she's waving people through, right?
Yeah, it looks like she waves one vehicle through at some point, and yes, the video that I've seen is that she's there blocking for about 3 minutes. Some what I want to call misinformation that I've seen is that I think the information that's out there now is that she was not just a bystander, you know, who happened to be driving by. She was not just she wasn't a target of ICE. She intentionally inserted herself in this situation as a form of protest. I would be willing to concede that. That's fine. So she's put herself into this position, okay, at this point. A little bit here just on the video here. So what I have it synchronized for, so the synchronization I have here, right now it's at minus 14:28. 14 is 14 seconds. The 28 is the frames, so 30 frames per second.
Okay.
That's just how my program does it.
As opposed to 6.
As opposed to point
So when it
seconds.
hits 30, it's going to flip over to 15.
Exactly, right? So I've done a little conversion. I have a chart here so I can kind of explain, but it'll give you a pretty good idea. So like, you know, if it's 0.15, that's 14 and a half seconds.
And do you want me, I'll just pull up your chart
Oh,
here.
perfect.
I don't know if people are
Yeah.
going to be able to see it, if they can zoom in.
Okay.
But
Right.
this is,
Yep.
so on your screen is the video, and over here is the stuff that you're talking about.
Some timestamps, exactly, right? So I synchronized 0 being the first shot that's fired, okay? So basically, I tell you what, I'm gonna play it through just at full speed, and then we'll kind of start
Does it have
breaking. Okay. All right. So I'm going to kind of back this up here. All right. So the first thing we see, right, is we obviously see the officers are going to be approaching her vehicle. All right. So, you know, they come out of the car, they're approaching her vehicle. And again, we can get into legality and their mission and whatnot of whether, you know, they're reasonable to arrest her or whatnot. There is Supreme Court case law that officers can order somebody from their vehicle, Pennsylvania versus Mims, without any type of articulable, you know, fact at all when it comes to their safety, right? I don't have to have an articulable reason to ask someone to exit the car. Simply the fact that they're in a car in control of that motor vehicle is enough of a justification for me to have them step out of the car. Now that doesn't mean, of course, I still have to have a lawful reason to contact the car in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that argument there can be made.
Before you might get to this, so
Yep.
what I'm hearing the driver say is, get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the fucking car.
Yes.
And then his passenger, I believe, I could not distinguish everything he said. It sounds like he's saying, ma'am or miss something.
Yeah.
And he's like gesturing. It seems like he's the more chill of the two.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I'm not a big fan of cops swearing at people. If nothing else, I understand it happens in the moment. If nothing else, it doesn't look good when we review things, right?
And just for reference, Agent Ross, the dude who fired the shots, has now walked around.
Yes.
And he's over there.
Yep, exactly. So I'm going to move this up to about, let's see here, I'm going to go up to about, about minus 4 point, just over 4 seconds before the first shot is fired. So Agent Ross at this time, and you know, if you look at the other videos, he's not standing in front of the car. He is he's in front of the car, but he's kind of off to the right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so at about minus 4.4 seconds and 10 frames, so that's about 4.3 seconds, okay? We see the vehicle shift into reverse, okay? So before that, she's either in park or she might be in drive, but she has her foot on the brake. It looks like her brake light is on.
Yeah.
So now the officer is giving her an order to get out of the car. All right. Again, we can discuss this, but at this point, I'm going to say that's a lawful order. Okay.
Okay.
She puts the car into reverse. Okay. Now they're not going to see that right away, and the agent who fired obviously isn't going to see that right away.
Mm-hmm.
But it's indicative that it would be a sign that you could interpret that she's about to flee.
She's not getting out.
She's not getting out of the car, exactly, right? So we continue up a little bit further here, and now we have the agent actually making contact with the door handle. Now, from a training perspective, right, if I see a car is in reverse, that it looks like it's about to take off, I'm not going to go up and grab the door handle, because you're not going to stop a 4,000-pound car from moving by grabbing the door handle.
Right.
But I think from their angle, there's a good possibility that they haven't seen that.
So when you're talking about training standards,
Yep.
are those, and I'm asking out of a position of complete ignorance,
Sure.
are they universal? So are you going to get trained, when we're talking about best practices, are you going to get trained the same way the FBI does, the same way DEA, the same way ICE does?
There's going to be variation.
Okay.
I do think that in general there are some, again, principles that we're going to follow, but it's going to depend on the agency, and it's also going to depend on how forward-thinking or modern or quick an agency is to adapt.
Yeah.
Right. These guys have been going and doing vehicle takedowns for months and months and months. I think it's reasonable to believe that they have quite a bit of experience doing it, and they probably had some pretty advanced training doing it.
So the other thing I wanted to know, it was earlier. Did you hear or would you concede that when they were first getting out of the vehicle, she gestured and said, "Go around"?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Does that change your analysis at all?
It doesn't at this point, because I still believe that based on the previous 3 minutes of her obstructing her investigation, they have reasonable cause to detain her or arrest her for obstructing their investigation.
Got it.
Okay. So anyways, so the agent grabs the door handle about 3.5 seconds before the first shot is fired. We move forward just a little bit here, and this is at the point where we start actually seeing the vehicle starting to move backwards. And just a little, not very perceptible, but we see that the frame by frame, the rear tire is starting to move, and she's actually starting to back up just a little bit. At 2 seconds before the shots are fired, 18 frames, her brake lights come on. So she backs up a little bit, and I mean the difference here between, when the agent grabs the door to when she backs up and starts braking, we're talking a second.
Right.
We're talking a second. This happens very quickly.
Mhm.
Okay. A few very shortly later, okay, you can see that her reverse lights are coming off. Okay.
Yeah, and we're talking about fractions of a second.
Fractions of a second here, right? So, yeah, just fractions of a second here, well less than a second. And we can also look at the way the wheels are turned, the front wheels. The wheels are turned to the left here, okay? The agent at this point, if we look at the other video angles and we look at his angle, he's not in front of the car. He's in front of the car, but he's off to the right. If she were to drive forward now, she wouldn't hit him. She's not in the path of travel, okay? As she backs up, she starts turning the front wheels just a little bit, right about there. I think you can start seeing that the front wheels are just starting to turn. Now you can look at the path that she took and you can look where he is. He's moved a little bit over, but I would argue at this point, again, well, he's in front of the vehicle with the way her wheels are turned. If she goes forward at this point, she's still not going to hit him, okay? My analysis
because he's too far to the right of the vehicle.
because he's a little bit too far offset and her wheels are turned to the left.
Sure.
Okay. At about 2 seconds before the first shot is fired, this is when I'm gonna say that he is in front of the vehicle, though the wheels are still pointed to the left. I don't believe he is in the path of the vehicle at this time. Okay. At right about
127.
there, 127, the brake is released. Okay, so that is 11/100th of a second from when I would say that the agent was actually in front of the vehicle, still with the wheels not pointed toward him, to when she actually lets off the brake. Okay. At this point, the rearward motion of the vehicle stops, and we kind of have a minor movement of the wheels coming to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And as we start pushing forward, we can see those front wheels just slowly starting to turn.
Mm-hmm.
And sometime around here is when I would say, okay, the agent, he's in danger now. Okay,
Because now the wheels are straightened.
he's in front of the vehicle.
He's in front of it.
The wheels have straightened. All right, this is when it's like, oh shit. Okay, the real oh shit moment comes when she starts hitting the gas, and we're gonna watch the front tire there. Okay, I'm gonna back it up a few frames. Icy roadway. Right there, we start seeing the front wheel starting to turn, and we see it slips. It's spinning out. Okay, it makes.
Essentially, I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad you're pointing it out.
Yep.
That's not something that, like, the spinning.
Yeah.
Granted, Minnesota, like, some of Christy Nome
Oh sure.
narrative was like,
Yeah.
a vehicle was stuck. I don't think we saw that in the 3 minutes
Yeah.
from the dude upstairs.
Yep.
But so I mean, tires spinning means she gunned it, right?
Well, it means potentially. It means that she accelerated. She obviously accelerated. Now, how icy is it? How
we're
is
saying
it?
that because you can see the spokes of the rim rotate.
Yes. Yep.
While the tire itself is not moving, which you can tell
Yep.
from the center line.
The bigger thing to me is that as the agent, he is likely going to hear that engine rev. Okay. Here's what's interesting is that when we examine how the brain processes information and reacts to stimulus, you actually you react faster to audible stimulus than visual stimulus.
Really?
Yeah, and I think, and I'm not a neuroscientist, but I believe it has to do with just the complexity of the information. Okay, so think about it like in our shooting competitions, waiting for a beep that you hear coming, it's like you recognize that right away. Visual, it's a much more complex, there's a lot more information, obviously, right? So to me, thinking what he's probably is that he's going to hear that vehicle revving. Whether he sees the wheels turn toward him or not, I'm not sure, of course. But she, to an extent, like you said, did she gun it? I don't know that she floored it. I don't think she floored it, but I think she stepped on it hard enough. I'm gonna just come out and say I don't think she intentionally wanted to hit this guy. But I think she wanted to get the hell out of there because I think she realized she was going to probably get ripped out of the car.
Well, and from your perspective,
Yeah.
just to be clear, it doesn't matter what she wanted. It matters what Agent Ross's reasonable beliefs would have been. It matters what his beliefs were, and then it matters whether the beliefs were reasonable. It doesn't matter at all what she wanted or thought or was trying to do.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yep.
Like a belief, and also under law both in Wisconsin and in these districts. I'll double check when we talk about the jury instructions. A belief can be reasonable even if mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So anyways, so engine accelerates. We have some wheel spin at about 1 second, and you can see the wheel's still spinning. Right about here, you can see if you look real closely.
Adrian, I'm sorry, can you do that one? I was looking at the cheat. Can you show me one more time the wheel spin?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so there's a wheel starting to spin. Boom.
Okay.
Okay. So it's not a lot, but it spins for, let's see, 0.20. So each frame is 0.033 of a second. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, there I'm seeing her,
Yeah,
there
you can
I
see the
it.
vehicle starting to squat.
Yeah, I didn't see it before.
Yep.
I take your word for it, but now I see it myself.
Yeah, and it might be hard for the viewers to see here.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll have a link, depending on the forum, like YouTube's a little fussy,
Yep.
and I should be able to upload this to
Sure.
my site, but we'll go ahead and we'll put all the supporting,
Sounds good.
the videos themselves at least,
Yeah.
they might have to slow it down themselves, but
Yeah, exactly.
I'll
Yep.
get links to this
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, about 1 second and 17 frames, which is 1.5 seconds before the first shot is fired. Her wheels are starting to spin.
Okay.
And then we see at about only 2 frames later, the rear of the vehicle starts to squat. So the weight transfer to the rear is indicating that she's starting to get traction and the vehicle's starting to move forward. And now we can really see, we can see the rear tire just slowly starting to move forward here. And when I say slowly, I mean this is obviously frame by frame. Each one of these is, 300ths
I'm
of a
assuming
second.
a Pilot is just front wheel drive, right?
I would have,
No.
well, it says 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, it does, but that has to be engaged.
Yeah, I believe so. Because usually an all-wheel drive vehicle is going to be, real all the time. So 4-wheel drive is usually something you have to engage.
Yeah, like,
But that's something we're
honestly,
looking into, actually.
I do think that this
Yeah.
is worth exploring because it's the best form of the argument that supports your conclusion.
Yep.
In my view about the conclusion hasn't changed based on this. Like I do think it needs to be fully explored.
Yep.
And also, I mean, I don't suspect that Agent Ross was fully aware of. He probably heard the engine rev.
Yeah,
Right.
yep.
But there's no universe, I'm guessing, in which he knew where the fucking tires were pointed.
I would agree. I would agree. I would agree at least to the point of it's going to be really hard to tell. And this is where like an individual statement about what they actually saw and perceived is so important. Because if you look at his cell phone video, you can see her turning the wheel.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Was he looking at her at that moment? Your field of view is, 140 degrees. And you only have 20/20 vision in about the center 1 to 2% degree cone of vision.
Interesting.
So if you everything else is your peripheral vision, you're a lot fuzzier. So if you are if he happens to be looking over at her wife, right, who's obviously kind of a distraction, yelling and things like that.
Yeah.
If he looks over there for just a second, with how fast this is going, he might totally miss that the wheels have turned or the wheels are pointed one direction or the other.
So just to amen you for a second on that,
Yeah.
It was a baby lawyer. I would say, at the time, I would say it was my first rodeo. Now I can say I've been bucked off that bull before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Judges are quick to know that whatever's caught on body cam, whatever's caught on squad cam, isn't the perspective of the officer.
Yes.
It's the perspective of the cam. Doesn't even matter if it's on their helmet.
100%.
Like, your eyes rotate, your helmet doesn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I mean, I do think that the video from his perspective is interesting. I mean, so we'll get to this in a second. Maybe you can address this as you're going, because I think one of my concerns is I know that humans generally, I'm sure there's an official name for this. I call it the post hoc imputation of reason.
Oh, sure.
So like
Yeah.
we do something,
Yep.
and then afterwards we make up a reason for it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you,
Yep.
as an appeals lawyer, I deal with it all the time.
Oh, I
I've
would
got
imagine.
trial counsel on the stand,
Yep.
and I'm like, why'd you do this? And they know they were playing on Sunday. They know on Monday how the game ended up, and they're going like, I decided that because, like, no,
Yeah.
you didn't.
Yeah.
Like, you just did it.
Yep.
Okay. So one of my concerns here is that the time frames are so short
Yep.
that I mean, when I look at this dude's draw speed, like, it's good.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like he's quick on the trigger.
Yep.
My position would be like, it's not dispositive as to my conclusion,
Yeah.
but my intuition or what have you, it would be that
like a oh yeah.
Post hoc imputation.
Yes,
Like
and-
I think you make it up after the fact.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
Like it's not an actual decision, but how does that play into your analysis, if at all?
And I think we might as well digress a little bit here to talk about how people make decisions under stress. Okay. I think laypersons, the average person tends to think like, how do I make a decision, right? Well, it's like Sarah model, right? I scan the problem, I assess, I respond, I analyze, or OODA, right?
Yeah,
Observe,
OODA loop is
orient, decide. Like it's
the stuff you're talking about is this
yes.
the Gary Klein.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Gary Klein a little bit here, right? So people tend to think decision making is like this process, this step that I go through. And it is when you're in a situation where you're going to make a slower analytical decision, right? The way that we make decisions under stress, okay, is you're driving down the Beltline at rush hour. And because it's the Beltline, you're driving too fast like everybody else. And, it's bumper to bumper traffic at 75 miles an hour. The semi truck in front of you suddenly slams on the brakes. And now you have to make a decision to avoid death or severe property damage. What are your options? I can slam on the brakes.
Swerve.
I can swerve right. I can swerve left.
That's about it.
I can throw myself from the vehicle. I can hit the gas and go ramming speed, this and that. How do you make that decision? Do you think them through?
No.
No. You just act.
Right.
How do you act? Okay. You act based on your previous experience.
Yep.
Okay. So this is something Gary Klein, Dr. Gary Klein has described, I think, the most realistic model, mapping brain waves and stuff like that about how people make decisions, right? And it's called recognition primed decision making. And basically, let me get my right sheet here. Basically, what he says is, he said, under stress like this, where we have no time to really think things through, our decisions are going to be fast and frugal. The decisions we make are based on what are called schemas, patterns, past training or experience. So, as you're driving down the highway there, okay, you've probably had vehicles slam on the brakes before you in the past. What is your most natural reaction? Foot goes to the brake. Situational awareness comes into play too, because again, if you've been in a situation like this before and you're maintaining some situational awareness who's around you, you may subconsciously know I can go to the right because I've been monitoring my blind spot.
Subconsciously check the rear view to see if there's anyone that's gonna hit
exactly.
you. Brake.
And this is where, I said farms training earlier always beats faster.
Yeah.
So if I can predict something coming, like you might see the traffic slowing ahead and you might be like, check my blind spot to the right, check my rear view mirror, things like that, okay? So basically what's gonna happen, your brain is not gonna logically think through, okay, should I brake, should I swerve right, should I swerve left? What it's gonna do is it's going to find the first schema, the first, answer that has basically worked in the past, and it's gonna execute that one. And if that one doesn't work, it's going to execute the next one, or it's going to modify the next one. It's going to modify that one if there's time. But, again, if we break it down into, say, swerve left, brake, swerve right, or a combination, your brain is not going to be running these programs in parallel. Right. They're going to be sequential. You're going to get answer one, doesn't work, answer two if you have time. Mm-hmm. That's it. So that's how the decision making is going to come here. And I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but people say, well, why didn't he just move to the right? Why did he shoot? Well, I'm going to argue that most likely because in all of his training in the past, when your life is in imminent danger from another person, the number one thing they're trained to do is shoot. Okay? They're trained to move and shoot for the most part, but shooting is part of it. So I would ask you, if putting yourself back into that belt line, slamming on the brakes position, what are you going to do to avoid the crash? You're going to do everything and anything that your brain possibly can think of that's going to save your life.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, it's a little scary with me looking at myself, putting myself in this position. Mm-hmm. I would like to think I would recognize that I just need to move to the right. But because of all of my training and all of my experience and just the way that your brain makes decisions under stress like that, I can acknowledge there is a very good possibility that I would have gone to my gun too while moving.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think, I suspect, I'm almost certain that the law has not caught up with neuroscience yet.
Yeah.
I think that I absolutely believe the stuff that you're saying.
Yep.
I've heard similar stuff in non-sensational circumstances from Sam Harris.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
He's a
Yep.
neuroscientist and podcaster. I adore him.
Yeah.
He thinks that, almost all of our thoughts are predetermined.
Sure. Yeah.
Like we're not actually in control of them.
Mm-hmm.
So in any event, I mean, I wonder what bearing that's going to have on cases as folks like you testify in matters like this, where, I mean, when you hear reasonable, it's a process of contemplative decision making, and that's not what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about you acted, and this post hoc determination of, was that reasonable? I mean, it's sort of a fiction, right?
It is.
Because he didn't reason through it.
Nope.
He just acted, and I mean, it's interesting food for thought. Before this conversation, I can tell you I haven't thought of this in this context, like what reasonable means in terms of self-defense and defense of others.
Well, I appreciate that. It's interesting because you're absolutely right that the courts have not caught up with this specifically in use of force incidents and law enforcement shootings. That said, human performance factors like this, looking at decision making, and we'll talk about some reaction times and stuff like that here in a little bit. For decades, we've been looking at human performance factors in the medical field when it comes to decision making of doctors under stress, like in surgery, aviation, pilot errors. And of course, motor vehicle stuff that like NHTSA has examined and explored when it comes to decision making. I'm going to talk a little bit about, again, reaction times, things like that. Mm-hmm. So in these other fields, this type of stuff has been along for a really long time. Athletics, professional sports teams pay big money to neuroscience, people and trainers and stuff like that to improve reaction times, race car drivers, things like that.
For sure.
Stuff, they live and die by it. That's how they,
It's super interesting.
Yeah. So it absolutely is applicable here, but the courts are just a little behind.
I interrupted you with that.
No, that's all right.
Where were we at in terms of video analysis?
Let's get here. So
we were, I think you were going over, like, the officer was grabbing, reaching inside, and then...
Yeah, all right, so the officer's reaching inside, and here's the thing, right? And I'm going to just real briefly be like, people are going to say he shouldn't have been reaching inside the car. He shouldn't have been going up to the car. This car could obviously take off. You don't get to determine always what tactics you're going to use. It's like, if I'm going to contact a car or stop a car, the safest way for me to do it is to every single time, get a police car and pin the back, pin the front, call an armored vehicle and things like that, pin it from all the sides,
Sure.
give a PA announcements over, like, it's not reasonable, okay? No one, including myself, is going to want to be stopped by the police like that, okay? The police sometimes just have to approach a vehicle and contact it in this manner.
So we're gonna. This might be later. I definitely want to get through the video.
Yep.
But I also don't want to forget, and there's a chance of that knowing me. What about Renee's reasonable apprehension? What about what she thinks is going to happen based on... using training and experience in a civilian context is a little bit... I did it for some of the Wisconsin protesters I was representing back during the, Scott Walker days. So, look, and we don't have to litigate this. In my view, ICE has said some shit that's just patently false in Chicago when they shot that woman. They were like, we're boxed in. Like, video revealed that to be absolute crap. Right?
Yep.
So, like, if Renee's out here obstructing them on purpose, for lack of a better word, and I wouldn't concede that is a final formal argument.
Of course.
But, like, if she's out there being a noble patriot.
Yeah.
So, like, and I understand she's dead, so we're not going to charge her, right?
Sure.
But, like... she could have, she's not thinking any faster than Agent Ross is. She could have a reasonable apprehension that she's in danger of great bodily harm or death.
Yeah.
Especially when a dude draws a gun.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a fair argument. Does it justify, her actions? I would tend to say not, simply because again, she's interjected herself into she's committed an illegal act. I would argue that she is obstructing a law enforcement investigation. Right? This isn't a lady who just went and sat down in the street in front of them. She's in control of a 4,000-pound bullet, right? And I think that's where, again, maybe I'm starting to get off into a different tangent here, but when we look at like the escalation of protest, protest tactics, it's like, you have your protest where you're standing on the street or on the sidewalk and you're chanting and this and that, and you're just expressing your opinion. And then maybe you have your passive civil disobedience where you're standing in a roadway. But then as you continue to escalate, you start adding things in where you, not necessarily intentionally, but you start adding a degree of danger to the people involved. And when you are throwing your car in and out of reverse, when you're blocking a street with your vehicle, to some extent, and I don't want to make too much of this or exaggerate too much, but to some extent, being in control of a vehicle like that, it's kind of like being armed, right? It's kind of like having a gun on you.
If it's okay with you, let's get through the video.
I agree.
And then we'll play Agent Ross's video, and then I think we can argue the minutia.
I agree.
And what applies.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So we're almost done here. So, anyways, we're basically at the point where yes, like the vehicle started to move forward. We see his hand going toward his gun about 1.3 seconds before the shot is fired. We can see his gun clearing his holster there. Her car is clearly moving forward toward him. He is stepping a little bit, moving his body a little bit to the right.
In terms of real life, this dude's draw was fucking fast.
Yes, okay, I see where you're going with that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was I have him here, what did I do with it? I think like a 1.3 second draw.
When I say draw, I mean from draw to first shot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. 1 point. So from the time he begins to move, now understanding decision-making time, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. We're talking probably minimum half a second for him to perceive something's happening to start going for the gun, unless he, again, maybe foreshadowed, he saw something coming, he started moving his hand there. But anyways, we're talking about, a 1.3 to a 1.5 second draw from stimulus to first shot.
Yep.
That's pretty solid. Okay, moving forward here, obviously he's going for the gun. You see his right foot step. He is stepping to the right. He takes a step to the right here, his right, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then...
His right, our left.
Yep, exactly. So out of the path of the vehicle, or trying to possibly move out of the path of the vehicle. Right about here, I think you have... Let's see, where is it here? One of these frames here, I think you have evidence that he is struck by the vehicle. Okay. And you can see both of his feet. Here we go, right here. You can see his left foot is in the air, and his right foot is grounded, but it's moving backwards.
Ah.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, you can't move that way, right? You can't.
Unless you're Michael Jackson.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say, unless you're moonwalking, you can't float with both of your feet through the air. If he would have pushed off on his front leg, we would have seen his body would have had to load, right? He would have had to lower his center of gravity and then hop backwards.
So I'll say two things in response to this.
Sure.
First, that him getting hit or not is not dispositive to my analysis.
100%.
And second, that given his video, I think that he did a one-hand draw and shoot is, from an objective perspective, impressive.
Sure.
And B, that he was holding the camera with his left hand.
Yep.
We can't tell. He could have been pushing off as well. We know his camera hit.
That's fair.
Like the sound, the sound that we hear, it sounds bad. I think that's why J.D. Vance released it, because it looks like Ross's video makes it look like he got hit for sure.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
I've seen. Do you remember that? I don't know if it was Madison PD that put it out. Like
Mm-hmm.
a couple of cops wearing their body cam, jumping up against each other,
Oh, I
and it
didn't
looks
see
like
that,
a
yeah.
horrible fucking skull.
Yeah.
And it's just like body cam can be misleading. I love body cam for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a great tool to have. It's not dispositive,
No.
right? And
No.
again, I appreciate the information. You're convincing me that he may have been hit. That doesn't change my ultimate analysis, but like this is information that I didn't have before, so it's useful.
And I think that's a really fair point, right? Because we don't have the camera angle here too. It's possible that with that left hand, he puts his hand down and he shoves himself away from the car too, right? So
we should give credit to this
yeah.
lady. I mean, obviously she's a protester, but her name was, her last name at least, was Callinson.
Okay.
I mean, this is as good a video as you can possibly get by mistake.
Yeah, no kidding. Man,
Like,
usually the videos that you have of these things, it's like, what are you doing?
like some of the other videos, the first video that came out,
Yeah.
which I think Trump saw, which still saying the dude got ran over is just bullshit.
I agree.
The first video, the grainy ass, like it looked like he got hit for sure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But this, I mean, remarkable quality, dude.
Yeah. It's so refreshing to
The
have
only complaint I have is that it's not 360. Like, you know, I had to back up a few times to see whether Renee was like what she was gesturing and what she said.
Sure.
Because you can only choose to point in one direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for Agent Ross.
Yep.
You know. Anyway.
Yeah.
I interrupt you.
No, that's all right.
Please continue.
That's all right. That's all right. So, anyways, either he's pushing off the car or he's being pushed by the car. All right. First shot is fired right here. Basically, from what we saw of the photos, it appears the first shot was fired through the windshield.
Okay, and he is to the left of the car now?
Yeah, he is still in front of the A-pillar, so, but he is off to the left of the car at this point.
A-pillar.
So the A-pillar being the pillar in front of the driver, right? So that's, so A-pillar, B-pillar is directly behind the driver, the C-pillar would be the one behind the rear passenger, and then the D-pillar would be the back. That's how we, yep.
Does it, and I would have to look at the videos again, does it concern you that we've only got one bullet hole in the windshield and we've got 3 shots?
No, I'm going to get to that in just a minute.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So anyway, so shot number 1, that's our 0 mark. Shot number 2 happens at about 0.45 seconds here.
Okay.
All right. And then shot number 3 is going to be about 0.79 is the math that I did. Okay. So we have 3 shots fired in about 3/4 of a second, about quarter-second intervals. So getting to your and then that's it. The last shot is fired. So getting to your question about do I have a problem with the shots going through the side window or things like that. We have to understand that there is reaction time, okay? And we get into this, probably the place where we've had the most studies of reaction times is from automobile vehicles, car crashes, things like that, driving, okay? Some different studies over the years. Mark Green was kind of, I don't know if he's a pioneer in it, but he's been the researcher who's done probably the most work on it.
Okay.
And basically, in studying drivers, what his conclusions were, what he found was your reaction time, if you are aware and like you are basically expecting something to happen, you are going to be looking at 0.75 seconds for you to react. And that includes your time to perceive, react to it and begin to carry out a motor
Which
function.
is what we've got here for all 3 shots, right?
Exactly, right. So 1.25 for unexpected, 1.5. There's another study here recently from MIT, basically said that reaction times again in drivers 390 to 600 milliseconds. So basically, 39 hundredths of a second to 6/10 of a second reaction time. If we look at basically the brainwave, we call it the P300 brainwave, which is the brainwave function when we look at stimulus response. When we have a known stimulus, like a real simple when this light comes on, press this button, what we call a go, no-go response.
Right.
We're looking at around 300 milliseconds, about 0.3 of a second, okay? Obviously, some people can be faster, like younger people tend to be faster.
It's an unfortunate truth.
Well, I know, right? Tell me about it. Formula One race car drivers had extremely fast reaction times. Baseball players had extremely fast reaction times.
You're just going through the
right?
Brad Pitt movies, Moneyball.
I know, right? There you go. Yeah. So, anyways, so that can vary, of course, right? Reaction time can vary. The more complex a situation is, the more distractions and chaos and stress in the environment, the longer the reaction time generally takes. What am I trying to get with all of this is that it takes time to make a decision, to process information, make a decision, and do something, carry out an action, and it also takes time to stop. Okay? And in fact, there's some studies showing that it actually is harder, takes longer to stop shooting, to recognize that a threat has passed, and now I have to stop shooting, than it is to recognize that the threat has started.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, I mean, where I was going with that is just that, in my view, and I hadn't thought about him shooting through the window and hitting her, but in my view, there were two errant shots.
Mm-hmm.
Like in my view, he hit her on the first one that we saw, the hole in the windshield.
Yep.
And that there's two shots that went I know not where, right? And that's problematic because we're responsible for every round that comes out of our gun.
Sure.
That said, I mean, there's no contention that his stray shots hit anyone. I was just wondering, because like, just as dudes who take shooting seriously, like we're committed that every round that comes out is our responsibility. So that's just, I mean, that's new information for me. In terms of the stopping shooting under pressure, and still, like, I'm not saying I would give the dude a pass on two errant shots.
Sure.
Like, if it took you that long to stop shooting, train better. I don't know. I mean,
well, and here's the thing. I don't think it's a thing that training can overcome. I think it is a human performance limitation, and that's my point there. And I wouldn't necessarily call them errant shots. They were on target. They were through her window, right?
You think that's where they were, and not past the car? Do we know where they landed?
I'm not sure. So I should be careful about making that assumption.
And I should be reserved in my
fair enough.
Implying that it was a negligent discharge.
Yeah. I hope he hit the car from 6 inches away. But
we know it didn't go through the windshield.
Yeah, exactly, right. Exactly. So anyways, when we look at this, it's like, if we back this up and I say,
yeah, you want to play the whole thing again?
Yeah. I'll make one thing and then I'll play the whole thing again.
Yeah, I don't interrupt you.
If I was gonna say, when did he make the decision to shoot? I would say it's sometime about here, right?
A little bit less because he's drawing.
Maybe,
that, right?
Yeah,
or
exactly. No? So there's going to be.
Do you think the decision is when he's drawing, or
there's going to be maybe a little give and take? I've got to give some leeway one way or the other.
And look, just because like between you and me, like maybe it was uncalled for, I have drawn my gun, right?
Yeah.
I did not shoot.
Yep.
So like the decision to draw is different, and there's keyboard warriors who say if you're gonna draw, you're gonna shoot. I think that's bullshit.
Yep, I agree.
So just because he's drawn doesn't mean he's made.
Doesn't mean he's made the decision to shoot.
Pretty good indicator that he's heading that direction.
He's definitely, exactly. I would say at least he's foreseen that this is something that may be about to happen. This may be imminent. He may not have, like if at this point as he's drawing his gun here, if all of a sudden she were to throw her hands up in the air and slam on the brakes.
Would he stop?
Maybe he would have time to stop. But again, we're talking half second, 3/4 of a second to start processing that information, maybe more. We're at a second before the first shot. At this point, it may be too late. He may not be able to process that information if his brain has sent the signal to shoot, right? It may be too late to recall that process.
I hear you.
So sometime around here, he has made the decision to shoot. Now look where he is when he makes that decision. Definitely by here, I would say he has. We're only, we're let's see, 0.35. I mean, we're half of a second, if even that, before the shot, right? So
does I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Does his holding on to his cell phone and like obviously
yeah.
what it's against, does that impact your analysis at all in terms of
It,
anything
it makes it a lot more difficult for him.
to shoot accurately?
Not just to shoot accurately, but just processing information. He's trying to aim his phone so he captures these people. He's probably trying to capture evidence, right? At that point, he's distracted by it. It's a distraction. I mean, I would say it's like driving down the highway, and I don't want to say maybe looking at your phone, but even having a conversation, even hands-free conversation, your brain, your mental processing is distracted from the task at hand. It's going to slow down his decision-making process.
Probably going to scold me. I went to the indoor range the other night, and I worked without having any training on no light, low light. I had my my flashlight, and I was like engaging the targets, right? It's fucking hard, dude.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Like to not have a Glock mounted light and be like, because all I know is what I've seen on the movies, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Like
Sure.
A, to not fucking muzzle myself.
Yeah.
Right. And then B, to like be holding it as I'm shooting.
Yep.
And then like correctly holster when
Yeah.
I'm done. So all I'm saying, like, is just that any shooter will tell you doing a one-hand shot is harder than doing a two-hand shot.
Yeah.
Like coming to a proper grip, like what we usually train with is this,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And second, even if you are so like trained enough to do a one-hand shot, like doing it with either a light or a cell phone or something else that you're trying to keep on target,
Yeah.
like that's a level of divided attention that's
Exactly.
pretty nutty. Like
Exactly.
that's beyond
Yep.
what humans are usually capable of.
Yes, I was absolutely gonna go there and say shooting is a divided attention task. It is just like driving, right?
Yeah.
I'm performing a motor function, and then, we don't multitask. We can switch tasks very closely.
Look, I think girls might be able to. Like, between mine and like some girls I knew in law school, like I'm fairly convinced their brains work better in that regard.
Yeah,
But
they're just better
boys
at faking
can't,
it.
and we're dealing with this boy.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. It is a truth about humans. We can't multitask. We switch our focus. Right. Our focus can't be on different things. We can switch very quickly. So when he's filming, when he's focused on filming, he is not focused on his safety. He is not focused on shooting. He is not focused on any of this other stuff.
Do you think it's a mistake for him, like tactically, professionally, etc., to be I mean,
Man.
I'll just be an advocate here, fucking around with his cell phone when he's dealing with this, what he's intuited at least as a life-threatening situation?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, again, in hindsight, but at the same time, you also have to understand where he's coming from.
And look, none of us are saying you have to be perfect to be reasonable.
No,
I still don't think he was reasonable. But us pointing out his lack of perfection is not an automatic indicator.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say, ideally, you'd want to be focused on the most important thing at hand. So, to me, the answer is like, he's doing that because he doesn't have a body camera, right? I mean, these guys should be being equipped with body cameras and stuff like that.
I would like to think that, brother. I don't know that it was on his mind.
Sure.
I mean, my impression is going to be he did what he did. Like, I don't think there was a lot of thought, and the reasonableness of it is something that we get to Monday morning quarterback. And we have to because of the state of the law.
Yep.
Like, I'm interested. Like I said, I don't know if we were on camera or not. I mean, his CV is impressive.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
When I read about him being previously dragged behind a car, I thought he was a Mel Gibson Lethal Weapon wannabe.
Sure.
And regarding that incident, that might still be my conclusion. Apparently, there's video of it that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just to say he appears to be a highly trained individual, and like his draw time and the accuracy of at least one shot would seem to evince that.
Yeah. I think when it comes to the filming, it's like he's trying to do multiple things at once. I can understand why he's filming, having been in those situations, because he's probably trying to record evidence, or he's trying to protect
that makes
those guys from use of force.
No, that's a really good point. Like I think I was diminishing it a little bit there, and in terms of like you're trying to protect yourself by like showing your viewpoint.
Yeah.
It does, like, that does raise the level of, like, keep the camera on.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so basically, yeah, that's that. And then, yeah, like I said, the shots afterwards. Okay, so yeah, so like I said, he's made the decision to fire, I'm sure by now. Okay. So when he's making the decision to fire, factoring in that decision-making time, he is directly in front of the vehicle. Okay? But because of the speed that the vehicle is moving, right, by the time that shot actually goes off, people can look at this, they can say, oh my God, when he actually fired, well, look where her wheels are turned. He's off to the side. He's not in danger anymore. Yep. Again, right versus reasonable. When he made the decision, when he had the stimulus, he processed it, he made the decision to fire, he absolutely was in front of the vehicle and in danger. By the time it took time to send the brain wave down to the trigger finger to present the gun and pull the trigger, the situation had changed just a little bit where you could argue, no, he's not in danger anymore. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the next two shots, again, sometime about here, he's probably recognizing, I'm not in danger anymore, so stop shooting. But the brainwave has already sent that signal to the trigger finger and saying, your life is in danger. It's going to take him half a second, 3/4 of a second, sometimes more than a second to perceive, I'm no longer in danger. I don't have to shoot anymore. It's, and again, that's just a function of human performance. There's no amount of training that's going to substantially change how fast you can react or change your behavior like that. That's just
that makes sense.
How we work.
When I say it makes sense, mind you, I'm not conceding it was reasonable.
Fair enough.
So if you wouldn't mind,
yeah.
Do you have Agent Ross's video? There's a couple observations I want to make, and I'll just foreshadow them. First, as we were just talking about, I think that he was hit could be him pushing off the car with his cell phone hand. Second, and this goes sort of to, I mean, this is the last thing as it goes to, his intent or his state of mind or what have you, in my view. And brother, I get that he might not have been processing all this,
sure,
right? But she is like cranking the fucking wheel to the right, like hard.
Yep.
And I'm not saying he was even looking at her. He could have been looking at her wife,
yep.
right? Like we talked about that.
Yep.
And then third, I mean, I almost, like, if I were his attorney, I'd object that this was prejudicial rather than probative, but, like, after he shoots her, he says, fucking bitch. Right?
Yep.
So it's just a thing. Maybe I'll put a disclaimer at the front of this because I don't want to be sued for libel.
Sure.
And certainly, like, I'm saying if I was a prosecutor, I don't know where the line is, maybe I should as a lawyer. I'm saying if I was a prosecutor, I'd charge this.
Sure.
And I think there's factual elements for the jury to sort out.
Yeah.
But I think that I would have probable cause to charge it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, like, there's shit you and I don't know. Like, he's given a statement to someone that we don't have access to.
Yes.
And that's going to be important no matter what it is.
100%.
I don't think the Fed should be running this. We'll get to that with the political part. But,
sure.
Like, all this is to say, obviously, none of this constitutes legal advice. We are professionals. You get to say you're an expert. I don't, because of rules of professional responsibility. I also get paid to do this.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
It's just to say, like, I want to run through this video just.
There we go.
Every morning, just so you know, it'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking back. You wanna come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
Whoa! So it was fast. Anybody who wants to, this is on Alpha News, which I believe is a conservative outlet in Minnesota. Okay. And I think it was released to them exclusively, but it's what J.D. Vance had reposted. And again, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily dispositive to my analysis, but it does make it, because I don't know that the officer was looking right at her, right?
Sure, yep.
But she is clearly cranking the wheel to the right, which I think, Adrian, both you and I agree, in, like, again, it's not dispositive, but we both think she wasn't trying to hit him.
Yeah, I mean, that's my That's my hunch, right?
Like, it's not something
Yeah.
he can know at that point, but
No.
given that we watched these videos 80 times,
Yeah.
like you and I can say, like, I wouldn't feel threatened by her, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Like,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't want to say that I wouldn't feel threatened by her. I don't believe that she intended to run him over, and part of that I'm gonna be very honest about this. Part of that is just my gut feeling, my hunch, based on her behavior, you know, how she's interacting, and things like that. She seems to be kind of aloof. You know, to the point where I don't think
very
she
chill.
very chill. I don't think she understood the type of danger though that she was putting herself in. Going back to kind of that initial ICE, you know, brochure that you were talking, or that
Yeah.
you know, thing that we started off with. I don't think she understood that the consequences of what could happen. So I don't think she was trying to hit him. But of course, that doesn't change his perception necessarily about
Right.
whether or not he was in imminent danger.
Her wife too, like with reference to go have some lunch, big boy. Like we've all seen the Meal Team 6, like since Hegseth is like re-upping our military standards.
Yeah.
With we don't change our plates daily. Like it's renowned that like ICE is just like they're trying to, you know,
Oh yeah.
be on the down low
Yep.
as they're getting around, right?
Totally.
So her wife, like, and again, this isn't a court. I mean, I would say if her wife's saying that kind of stuff, that's the kind of stuff that Renee probably believes too, right?
Sure.
And I wouldn't say
Absolutely.
wrong.
Yeah.
Like I'm on Renee's side.
Yeah. No, I get it. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and again, I don't think I understand. It's a little bit crazy to have shot. I don't know if he knew he shot her, but shoot or shoot someone and say stuff like "fucking bitch" as you know you're recording. Like,
Yeah.
what? Do you have something to say about that?
Yeah, I do, and so I would agree with kind of what you said before. You know, probative versus you know, prejudicial, things like that.
Yeah.
And this is why, and believe me, some cops really fight me on this. You know, they say, well, this is you know, swearing at guys. It's a language they understand, and this and that. Like, I don't care. Like it. What is your grandmother gonna think when she sees this on the news, right? You know, eventually, what is a jury of your peers gonna think? So I can understand why he would be pissed at that point. Like, I've had people hit me, I've had people, you know, maybe not quite to this extent, but I've had people do some pretty dangerous stuff, you know, that endangered my safety, and it pisses you off. But when you allow yourself to say things like that, even if they kind of slip out, it absolutely is, you know, something that could be used against you. It could show, hey, well, he had you know, he was upset, he was angry, he wasn't in control, things like that. So that's why I'm like, you know, yeah, you got to be able to control yourself. You got to be able to control those, you know, those emotions and those words from slipping out.
And overall, like, I would not condemn the dude for saying "fucking bitch."
No.
After this went down, even if for whatever reason, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, people get to talk, including cops, and I agree with you, it looks bad, but it's not dispositive of the situation.
Exactly.
I think it's somewhat informative.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I'm just saying that as like for anyone who's out there watching for you know, either law enforcement officers or citizens, whoever may have to defend themselves, like, try to get in the habit of not saying stuff like this. It's not going to help you, you know? It's just not going to help you.
Well, there's a difference. I mean, like, that feels like, I mean, in legalese, we talk about present sense impressions and
Yeah.
what was going through his mind at the time and
Yep.
excited utterance,
Yes.
etc.
Yep.
Like, it's clear that the dude was in it. No one's gonna say he wasn't in
Of course
it,
not. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's great. I think that we did a really thorough job in terms of reviewing the video. The first video that came out that was grainy, I think we said offline, like, in my view,
Mm-hmm.
that's the one that Trump viewed, and I still don't think, like, the dude got ran over and it's a
Sure.
miracle he was alive was a fair characterization.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, from that grainy ass video, there was more of a sense that the dude got hit. I think
Yep.
that these are better evidence than that was.
I agree.
And then from the fourth floor dude with the gruff dog,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that that's showing that Renee may well have been blocking traffic. So from there, if it's cool with you, we gotta.
Yeah.
I want to segue into the legal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me think. Let me start with. I mean, I think what is at least a prima facie challenge to the notion that this was a legal stop, right? A couple of things. I'll be pulling up on my and I'll post it to wherever we post the video. But I want to talk about the possible crimes she could have been committing and what the elements were.
Yeah.
First, I want to talk about, we established at the beginning that ICE is 100% under United States Code to effect arrests, including of U.S. citizens, when they see someone violate the U.S. Code in their presence, or they believe a felony has been committed,
Sure.
right? So here's the thing. I mean, I will follow up on this depending on viewer input. Like, I could be wrong. Like, the literal statute says that they're empowered to make arrests for any offense against the United States if the offense is committed in the officer's or employee's presence or etc. I take that to mean if any violation of the U.S. Code has occurred in their presence.
Sure.
Someone more informed who does more federal practice might say, oh, brother, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean, right? So I've got to put that caveat in there. There are some qualifications to effecting arrests. They're found in, so like this is 8 FCR 287. And the federal code basically narrows down, it's like an administrative code. It's still law, but it's not quite statute law. It's not quite, you know what I mean? It is certainly above policy, right? But it is not the statute either.
It's
like
not
it's
punishable
official,
by,
It's like the official interpretation of the statute.
Okay, sure.
So when we're talking about ICE's authority to conduct arrests under these circumstances, what I'm looking for particularly is at the time of the arrest, the designated immigration official shall, as soon as it is practical and safe to do so, A, identify himself or herself as an immigration officer who is authorized to execute an arrest, and B, state that the person is under arrest and the reason for the arrest. So here's the difference between the federal codes we're talking about and Wisconsin law. In Wisconsin law, if you're a cop in your official capacity doing cop shit and I make your job harder, I'm guilty of obstruction. Right? I'll get to the federal statute in a little bit, but when it comes to their arrest authority, my contention is going to be that when the driver of the vehicle that stopped got out and said, get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the fucking car, there was certainly enough time to safely say, I'm an ICE official who can make an arrest and you're under arrest for obstruction. Right? And in my view, that would change the analysis. Now, whether she would have done anything differently, I don't know. My point is that if that were said, she should have done something differently. Right? And she didn't have that opportunity. One of the problems that we have, if we get to it in the 20 minutes, when I proposed this on Facebook, I said, like, this would be a good conversation for us to have over 2 or 3 sessions. And I think we've covered so much in this one. I'm not ruling out covering further stuff because we're time limited. And I dig it too. I really appreciate you going through all this and being here to do it. So yeah, I think that, you know, how one of the difficulties here is that we've got at least 2 ICE officers giving directions. I think in other versions, we've heard people telling her to move. I don't know if they were ICE officers or not. So it was possible that she was being given conflicting directions. I know that his passenger was saying, ma'am, something. I couldn't hear it on the 2 videos we've got. It's just to say that that certainly should have been done better by the driver who is trying to arrest her, if that in fact is what he's doing. Because one of the main complaints of we patriot civil rights protesters is that, like, these dudes have started wearing masks. They're not wearing their names. Maybe they have badge numbers that we can eventually track down. And whether it's here or someone else, I wanted to note that, like, Agent Ross took off really quickly. You could apprehend that he was maybe in danger from the crowd because they were, in my view, justifiably upset at having just witnessed what they considered, and I kind of agree, to be a murder. I want to be careful because I don't want to libel him. Like, he hasn't been convicted. In my esteem, it seems like that's what happened. So I want to be gracious and say, like, I can imagine why he would have taken off. can you chime in for just a second? Like, if
Yeah.
you shoot someone, like,
Yeah.
under this circumstance, there's a pissed off crowd.
Yeah.
You just smoke someone.
Yep.
What is protocol
Yeah,
required?
well, first of all, the first thing I want to say is I 100% agree with you on the clarity of the communication, how important that is for law enforcement officers, and that's something I stress in training frequently. It's like, if we have multiple officers involved, one person is giving clear commands. We don't need. I've seen way too many situations where one officer is saying, get down on the ground, and the other one's like, show me your hands, and don't move, and get down on the ground. It's like, well, people don't know what to do,
So it ended very poorly, but the thing in Minneapolis where the brother got killed with the kneeling on the neck, that was a good example. Chauvin was the one giving directions, and no one was contradicting him.
Yeah.
And that's...
Yeah.
We can argue whether that went rightly or wrongly, but the point was Chauvin was in charge there.
Yes.
Right? There was no confusion about who was in charge.
Absolutely.
Whereas with this one...
Yeah, and I think not even so much of like... I see that being slightly different, but just from the perspective of the person who's maybe under arrest. I mean, I can understand. She's in the car. She's
I don't
like,
want to get fucking shot.
She's like, am I under arrest or am I not under arrest?
And her wife, we can hear in this video, she's yelling, "Drive, baby, drive."
Yeah.
I mean, look, if my girl's yelling at me to drive,
yeah,
I'm probably gonna fucking drive, right? Regardless of what the cops are doing.
Yeah.
But that said. So the cop doesn't identify himself. We have problems with ICE not identify themselves and being masked.
Yep.
In terms of Ross leaving, what's your intuition?
Okay, so now on that, I'm going to say that, again, depending on the situation, generally speaking, as a police officer, we're going to want to gain control of the scene. I've seen so many videos of these guys being completely overwhelmed by large crowds and things like that. Yeah, I mean, there's that incident down in Chicago where they were calling for backup, and the Chicago police captain or assistant chief basically denied the backup. Sometimes local authorities respond, sometimes they don't. They faced some pretty hostile crowds, so I can understand. In that situation, there may be a desire or a need to extract oneself from the situation. Now, the shooter, the officer being removed from the scene pretty quickly, that's actually kind of standard, okay? Because during the investigation phase, that officer, we don't want them going and talking and making stories up or things like that, right? We want them kind of sequestered. In an officer-involved shooting investigation, we're going to pair them with somebody to just monitor them, make sure they're okay. But then that person is also going to be subject to, if the officer involved makes any excited utterances, tells them anything like that, right? They're going to be questioned by investigators. Hey, you were paired up with Agent whatever his name was. What did he say to you during this time? And the training that we give officers is, hey, during this time, shut your mouth. Don't say anything. Don't talk about this thing. And it's like, hey, you doing okay? Do you need something? You need some water? Stuff like that. But don't start talking about what went on. Don't put another officer in that place where now they got to talk about what you said.
Almost certain that we're going to have to do a follow-up because so many things to follow up on are occurring to me. So maybe we can do that within the next few days.
Yep.
One of the things that I want to point out, because it relates to, I'd asked you on Facebook, just as a brief, the way we started talking is you posted something to the effect of what are people thinking going to fight federal officers, that's not going to end well. And I'm like, she wasn't fighting, dude. And you got a remarkable, it was a private post, so I'm not going to you know what I mean? It wasn't a public one. Given that it was private and that these people are your friends, you got a remarkable amount of pushback. And you're a gentle, well-regarded guy. And I got a sense that a lot of your friends who know you were like, dude, what the fuck? Right? And you still stuck to it, right? I mean, you stuck to your analysis. I want to say part of the frustration that common citizens have, if I can be a defense attorney,
please.
And I'm positive, none of us when we shoot someone is going to get take 2 days to figure out your story and here's a union rep. Right? Which is what you guys get. And at the same token, as a lawyer, when someone makes a complaint to the Office of Lawyer Regulation, they send me an email and they say, get back to me in 2 weeks. Right? So I get it. It's not a life or death thing. But our systems of authority, they're stacked in favor of the people in authority, right?
They are.
So that's somewhat frustrating. In terms of the point I was trying to get to when one of your friends had said they were carjacking them. Like, I want to use that. They were carjacking Renee. The ICE agents were essentially
Sure.
carjacking Renee. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have used that language. I thought it was clever.
Yeah.
And the reason I thought it was clever is because, like, if these dudes weren't cops, we would certainly say they were fucking carjacking her.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And the reason I bring it there is because under the FCR, they're supposed to identify themselves. They're
Yep.
supposed to say, we've got the authority to make the arrest and what you're being arrested for.
Yep.
And I think that would have changed, or could have changed the analysis.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good example of what I kind of said before, that I don't think that changed, in my opinion, the criminal investigative,
Right.
but I think that does potentially open it up to some civil liability.
So moving in that direction,
Yeah.
I mean, we've probably got 5 or 10 minutes left,
Yep.
which is fast.
Yep.
I'll just say for background, maybe we can dive more into this and anything else like after we sleep on it.
Yeah, I think so.
In law, there's something called affirmative defenses. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about self-defense.
Yes.
And I think we both say that mostly the same rules apply to cops as apply
Yep.
to citizens.
Sure.
If you, what an affirmative defense is when you say, yeah, I committed this crime, but I did it for a reason that makes it not illegal,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
The very popular examples are self-defense, defense of others, defense of property. So I want to draw some notable distinctions here. You're privileged to use force or the threat of force to defend your property. I could, and this is going to be contentious,
Sure.
but if you're interfering with my property, I can draw on you and say, back the fuck off with my gun,
Yep.
right? I may not shoot you because defense of property specifically says you can't use deadly force
Yes.
merely to defend your property. For self-defense, you are privileged to kill another person if you're doing it to prevent great bodily harm or death to yourself or to a third person.
Yes.
I think that Agent Ross would only reasonably construe a threat of, I think this is important for us to zero in on.
Yeah.
I think he could only reasonably, if he could, and I don't think he could, if he could only construe a reasonable threat of death or great bodily harm to himself, not others. Would you agree with that?
I am going to say probably. Again, I think this is one where I'd have to hear what he had to say and his perceptions, because we do have the other officer at the car,
Yep.
reaching into the car, trying to open her door and things like that. So I'm going to say probably, but I'm going to give a little bit of wiggle room there,
Well,
because,
So
it's possible.
the point I want to make is that
Yeah.
in some instances where you have a cracked up asshole who's been driving crazy and maybe even run some people over, you might not legitimately fear for yourself, even though they came close to hitting you, but you might think, like,
Yes.
this brother gets 3 blocks down the road, he's going to run over a baby in a stroller, and
Yes.
then you can smoke him, and that's legal,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
Because you reasonably feared,
Yep.
given their conduct. I don't think that a reasonable person would look at Renee and think she's going to drive down the block and run people over.
I totally
right?
agree. Yep, totally agree
So
with
it's just
you.
the
Yep.
immediate officers around there, not that
Yes.
she's fleeing and going to make a...
No, exactly. She doesn't pose, I don't feel she poses any great danger to anybody else in the public at that point. I agree.
I wish we had more time.
Yeah.
I
That's like
wanna-
about 10 minutes or so. I mean, yeah.
So you had noted on Facebook, like, a cop is not just a representative of the government, and I love that you said just, I mean, you acknowledge that a cop is a representative of the government.
Of course.
Right?
Oh, yeah,
And
absolutely.
when we abuse y'all with our language, when we say fuck you, fuck the police,
Yeah.
whatever, like, we're privileged to do that. We have a right, it's not privilege, it's a right to do that under the
Absolutely.
First Amendment, because we're talking to the government, we're talking to a representative. And you're not just the government,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You're also a person with a family. I want to get your reaction on, like, I agree with you that the cop is, and also Renee was, and this is something that is a constant tension for me as I consider this, is like, in my view, she reasonably feared death or great bodily harm because, like, she had dudes trying to, like...
Yeah. I mean, I agree to disagree with that one. I think, you know, you have guys who are in uniform, and I know faces are covered, this and that. I think her action of inserting herself to protest ICE is kind of prima facie evidence that she knew these people were police officers, and should have, in my opinion, should have known that they had a lawful authority to arrest or detain her. Which, you know, we've talked up kind of back and forth about a little bit here. So
That's fair. I'll reflect on it.
Yeah.
I do want to observe just for the audience before we wrap up, and then I have like 2 last questions for
Yeah,
us.
absolutely.
So for the audience, I want to observe that a couple of things. First, just by way of comparison, in Wisconsin, we've got an affirmative defense called coercion,
Yep.
where it's only available if the only way you could avoid this unlawful interference is by committing the act you did. Self-defense doesn't explicitly have that. They don't explicitly say you can only do self-defense if there's no other course of action.
Sure.
Right? I will say that when it comes to the federal rules, the Eighth Circuit, where we are, doesn't particularly have a jury instruction related particularly to the sort of obstruction that Hannah Dugan was convicted of, where
Okay.
ICE is,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
So the Ninth Circuit does.
Okay.
The Eighth Circuit does not.
Interesting.
Both of them have the same jury instructions, but they don't interpret U.S. Supreme Court precedent in the same way. So the jury instruction for the Eighth Circuit is that the person knew that there was a proceeding pending, that they corruptly endeavored to obstruct it, and that they meant to do so, right?
Sure.
The Ninth Circuit clarifies that corruption
Yeah.
just means that they meant to obstruct it,
Okay.
which in my view is a catch-22. Like it's a cart horse sort of thing.
Sure.
So I take it in your view, fundamental to your analysis is that you think the officers were properly trying to apprehend her. Like at the point where they told her to get the fuck out of the car, they were placing her under arrest in your view a lawful way.
Yes.
So the fact that I'm saying, and we'll follow up on this, like I don't want to make it too forceful, but
No,
like
sure.
I'm saying they didn't dot their I's and cross their T's, and that in fact this might not have been
Sure.
an act of corruption
Yep.
for the purposes of obstruction. Does that change your analysis at all or no?
I think I would have to reflect on that a little bit myself. I think it's going to depend on the egregiousness
Mhm.
of things. I do think that regardless of whether they have the authority to arrest somebody, they have an interest in protecting their safety and
Yeah.
have an interest in protecting the general public safety around there. So it's something I'd have to think about that one a little bit. And I would say my initial thoughts, without doing a little bit more research, would be, again, I don't know that changes the criminality of it, but I think that certainly could open them up to civil liability.
So I want to conclude for my part,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
our time's up.
Yep.
I snuck in the last word.
No,
It's
that's
such
quite
a
all right.
defense
That's
lawyer
quite
trick.
all right. Yeah.
So in my view, notwithstanding that the jury instruction doesn't say that this was the only way to do it,
Sure.
what I would do as a prosecutor, the jury instruction, regardless of Wisconsin, Minnesota, 8th
Yeah.
Circuit, 9th Circuit, does say that the use of force was necessary to prevent
Sure.
death or great bodily harm.
Yep.
What I would do as a prosecutor is to slam home the fact that necessary means, in fact, that there is no other alternative, and
Sure.
the alternative was to step to the right.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
yep.
I think, dude, we went longer. I mean, if we can do another one in a couple of days
I'd love
to
to,
follow
man.
up,
Yeah,
do you
let's
want
do
to?
it.
I mean, I'll stop all this, and we don't have to include this part, but
Yeah.
we can post this and then say we're also going to follow up in a few days
Yeah,
to address
absolutely.
these remaining things.
Absolutely. Let me sneak one more thing in
Yeah,
though
please
to
do.
your response to that. If I was defending this officer,
Mhm.
I would come back and I would say, well, necessary, but what is reasonable, right?
Yeah.
What is reasonable from his perspective at that time? And I think
Absolutely.
you're going to have a good argument.
Well,
You're
no.
going to have a good case both ways.
And I
you
think
know?
as an expert, something you deal with often, or and what you train guys on
Yeah.
is reasonable does not mean only. It's
Yes.
not the only way of dealing with it,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
And frankly, like the eye-opening thing for me here has been that our law needs to catch up with neuroscience, right? Because
Sure.
there's no universe in which this dude thought this shit out.
No, exactly.
Oh, nor I think did Renee.
No, no,
Right.
exactly. She's going through the same process that he is. Absolutely.
But if this dude were to
Yeah.
be charged,
Yeah.
or sued civilly,
Mhm.
either one, we're going to employ a legal fiction that's outdated.
100%.
That says he intended to, like just by virtue of the use reasonably.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yep.
no one's going to understand that to mean after the fact we're ascertaining it, they're going to understand it to mean like he engaged in a process of reasoning, which you and I will agree he did not do.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely not.
Thank you so much.
Hey man,
for the time, brother.
absolutely, a great talk. So.
Yeah. You know, we'd said when we were texting, thank you so much for coming back today,
Yeah.
by the way. Like, it's so soon after the last one. I really benefited from a night to sleep on it and just sort of recalibrate.
Yeah, you bet.
You know, I think that both of us agree that what we want to do is not straw man the other side and say like, oh, here's their stupid argument, but we want to steel man it and say like, here is the very best argument for the other side.
Yeah.
And here's why I disagree with it.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I tell people some of the work I do for defense attorneys, I've gotten feedback from several attorneys, and they say, man, you are exceptionally thorough in my stuff. And I try to be that way with my law enforcement investigations too, because the way that I approach these things and I try to like prove my point is after I have my hypothesis or whatever, it's kind of a little bit of the scientific method, right? I go back and then I try to find everything I can to disprove it. You know, and by not being able to disprove it, you know, have I, you know, at least strengthened my own, you know, my own position and things like that. So I personally always want to be looking at the other side, the arguments, you know, against what I have to say, and sometimes it comes down to, you know, it's a matter of opinion, right?
Yeah.
There's not a clear, hard, fast, this is the absolute truth and this is not. It's, you know, judgment, and that's I think what a lot of the law is, right? It's, you know, judgment.
Yeah, and I want to clarify on this case in particular. Like, I really do believe what I'm saying.
Sure.
I mean, I know that I included the caveat yesterday that like, if I said it this way or not, what I meant is I wouldn't be paying attention if this weren't ICE, if this were a BLM shooting, if this were
Sure.
just someone thought there were drugs in the car and whatever. I mean, this isn't the sort of thing that I would normally be outraged by.
Sure.
And so I'm giving extra attention to it because of the overarching, like, I detest Trump, and I think that the way he's using ICE, trying to use the National Guard is atrocious.
Yep.
And I think this is a great example of that going wrong.
Sure.
That said, I mean, I would still, I mean, I'll maintain, like, this is a tension I'm comfortable with. If this was you at a stop with BLM or something similar,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be happy to defend you.
Sure.
And also, like, as a prosecutor, if I were a prosecutor in this case, I would believe that I could get a conviction with a beyond a reasonable doubt standard, not just
Sure.
probable cause.
Yeah.
But,
Yep.
and I'm looking forward to explaining why. So before we go there, did you have any other stuff that I mean, I feel like we went over, your video analysis was excellent. You showed me things that I was oblivious to in terms of, like, he definitely had contact with the car because of the leg positioning and, like,
Sure.
the physics, right?
Yep.
We talked about stuff like his view is not necessarily what his cell phone's view was.
Yep.
That said, any other stuff that you feel like we didn't cover yesterday that we ought to cover before I start pontificating about why this dude should go to the guillotine?
Sure. I think the only thing that I would really add is, and this might be kind of prefacing where we're going to go with this, and my opinion, to probably what you're going to talk about, is that I understand when people watch a video like this, whether it's this video or another law enforcement involved shooting, why people see this and they get outraged, right? Because when we watch this video, I can honestly say, having watched the video all the way through, it looks like he didn't have to shoot her, right? Because she drove off to the right. He didn't get substantially hit. He got clipped or pushed, however you want to, phrase it. So I think people see that and they're like, oh my God, he didn't need to shoot her. But, in that moment when he makes that decision there, that's all he gets to see. And he probably doesn't even get to see it as well as we do. So I think it's just important that when people look at these shootings, they remember that, the courts don't judge them in perfect 2020 hindsight.
Yep.
We don't get to Monday morning quarterback it to that, far
To
of an
that degree,
extent.
right.
It's, this image here is like, that's where the decision is made, and that's the perspective that, we evaluate his decision on. So,
Yeah, and I'll say, like, if I were that cop in that situation, I would certainly want your analysis on my side.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
Yep.
I think I'm not aware of anything out there in support of this dude that you haven't identified, and the way you've broken down the video moment to moment and then contextualized it in terms of this is how fast we think, this is how fast decision making happens.
Yep.
And I mean, I want to say, like, I think it's just sort of natural because we're friends. I wasn't laying any sort of trap yesterday.
No,
right?
no, likewise.
Like with the concessions that I made, I really meant them. Like, oh yeah,
Yep.
I can see
No,
how
likewise.
X, Y, Z, right? And I kept saying over and over again, like, also it doesn't change my analysis,
Sure.
right? So I wanna go through just the parts of mine. It's gonna incorporate. I won't totally redo the stuff that we talked yesterday about the C.F.Rs. I can put that stuff up
Sure.
online, but we covered what they were yesterday, so when I reference it, like, we'll get there.
Okay.
So I definitely want your commentary on the few points I've got, and then I think where we're gonna end up is, I suspect I will not have changed your mind, nor vice versa, and I think that it's profitable to have a conversation about overall what's happening in our country,
Yeah.
the context of where this went down and what, if anything, we can do about it.
I like it.
Right.
That sounds good.
So in regard to this particular instance, I think that my knockout punch, I think that the reason I can concede everything under the sun is that no handgun is going to stop a car. No handgun is going to stop the driver of a car that's already accelerating, whether he knows whether the wheels are spinning or not. And so what follows from that, I think, is that his actions couldn't have been reasonable in the way that's required by both Wisconsin and the Eighth Circuit jury instructions, that you reasonably believed you were in danger of death or great bodily harm, and the actions you took were reasonable to terminate that interference.
Sure.
Right. And I don't agree that Renee was perceived as a reasonable threat.
Okay.
So that's my second point. But then that first point where it's like, this isn't a 50 BMG. It's not an anti-material round, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not shooting it through the engine in order to stop this.
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, the shots he popped off were just pointless to the objective. Like,
Sure.
that is the strongest argument I've got. What do you say to that?
I mean, I think it's a good argument from a if you're a prosecutor. I think I would make that argument if I was in your shoes. Let's look at, like, the physics of it. You have a 4,000-pound vehicle. Okay.
I don't remember if you said. Did you say it was like a 4,000-pound bullet yesterday?
Yeah. Right.
Something
I mean,
like
so
that.
you have a 4,000-pound, right? I mean, it's basic physics. You have a 4,000-pound vehicle. You have a 124 grain projectile, 7,000 grains per pound, if you want to do the math. So, like, the physics of it doesn't line up, right? First of all, we don't shoot cars to stop cars. Okay. Now, when it comes to shooting the driver, this is where, like, we talked a little bit about it yesterday, how nuanced things are, right? There's a difference between a vehicle that's speeding at you at 40 miles an hour and shooting the driver. There's a difference between a vehicle that's, moving a little bit, that's just starting to move. Like, there's so many different factors that could weigh into it. So I think it's important that we take into account and, to an extent, give benefit of the doubt, for lack of a better term, that there are cases where vehicles have been stopped and officers have kept themselves from getting run over by shooting the driver. Sure. So many things. It's like, heck, even where the driver is shot, right? If we think about, it sounds like Ms. Good, unfortunately, was shot in the head, and it was probably an instant death or instant incapacitation. you know, when that happens, when, you know, the brain basically gets turned off, like the body just becomes dead weight. So if her foot's on the gas, it's probably not going to be lifted off the gas.
And I think we saw that in the
Right.
acceleration toward the vehicle.
Exactly. The vehicle actually accelerated,
Well,
I would say, or it
crashed and
continued.
bounced.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like it was a.
And I think the wheels were still spinning. You could hear the engine revving. Like, I don't think her foot came off the gas until somebody got to the car and like pulled her out or kind of, you know, moved her or whatever, shut off the car. That said, there have been plenty of shootings where somebody gets shot and they change their behavior, not necessarily just because they're physically incapacitated, but because they don't want to be shot anymore. I want to say it was down in Florida a number of years ago. One of the sheriff's offices or SWAT teams got some of the P90s that shoot the little 5.7 rounds, because that was going to be all the rage back then. And talking with a guy who worked down there, he was like, "Yeah, we shot a few people with these guns, and these suspects were like, ouch, like stop shooting me." They got shot several times and they were like, "That hurts, like don't shoot me anymore," right? So, you know, again, it's such a nuanced thing. There are cases where cops have shot drivers in cars and they've stopped for whatever reason, whether they choose to or it physiologically affects them and they move the wheel, they pull their foot off, I don't know. From the pure physics of it, I would say, yeah, it's unlikely to stop the forward momentum of a vehicle. But I would just counter to say that in that moment, anything that you possibly think you could do to stop that car from running you over, you're going to do it. And from my perspective, my opinion, I don't think that's unreasonable. You know, if I was in that case and I thought there was a 1% chance that this was going to help me stop that car and keep me from getting killed, I would do it. So
I'll maintain that regardless of the caliber in his handgun, there was no hope of stopping that vehicle. And what I'll circle back to in just a few seconds after I go through the weaker, like I've got 2 or 3, I think less knockouty punches.
Sure.
Then there's just no way for him to stop her.
Yeah.
But what all that feeds into is the jury instruction of, you know, the force necessary to stop the person.
Sure. Yep.
And I think since the force couldn't stop that person, it wasn't necessary. And as a prosecutor, the reason I would pursue charges is that I think that I could show a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that not only was stopping her impossible, but that necessary includes doing other reasonable things to like not get killed.
Sure.
And that in this case, that was as simple as stepping aside.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And I mean, we talked about that yesterday in terms of like what you think and hope your response would be.
Yep.
And how like he was moving to the right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I wouldn't, given what the Supreme Court has said, was it was Felix versus Barnes or Barnes versus Felix?
I think it's Felix v. Barnes? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
Now
How
that you
much
say it, Barnes v. Felix.
we talked about it yesterday, but just for background, I mean, essentially what that case stands for is some circuits used to say it was only the moment of the threat when we consider officer reasonableness, and the U.S. Supreme Court in this case said, no, we'll consider the totality of the circumstances. So it's not as Mel Gibson is hanging on the car saying, I want to see your license and registration.
Yep.
It's like what led up to him jumping on the car, etc.
It's interesting, and I don't think we touched upon this a ton yesterday, but in Barnes v. Felix or Felix v. Barnes, basically an officer, I think he made a traffic stop or something like that. At some point during the traffic stop, he thinks the driver's going to take off, and he literally jumps onto the car. He jumps into the door, driver takes off, and he shoots him. And he says, I was, in fear for my life, of course, because we're traveling at, starting to accelerate. Understandably, of course. Well, the lower court said, yep, this was reasonable because, even though he made a mistake at the moment of threat, he didn't use good tactic. At the moment of threat, it was reasonable for him to fear his life was in danger. It went up to the Supreme Court. Here's, I think, where there's some misconception. A lot of people think that the Supreme Court said, an officer-created jeopardy nullifies someone's right to self-defense.
That's not what that case says.
It doesn't. It's not. I don't even want to say it's not even they didn't even really talk about officer-created jeopardy. They simply said it's totality of the circumstances. That's how it's always been. You need to go review the case from totality of the circumstances perspective. And apparently they did, and they still came to the same conclusion, which I personally don't agree with. I do think that type of egregious error, sorry, my phone.
No, it's all good.
That type of egregious, that is such an egregious tactical mistake. I don't even want to call it a mistake. It's just, I don't even know how to describe that. Yeah, you can't do that. I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, so I mean, I want to underscore that case. Not only did they not decide whether officer created jeopardy was something to determine, they explicitly disclaimed that they were deciding that. They're like, this is not presented to us. So I think it was offline that I told you there's a decent podcast. I mean, a great podcast. It's called Advisory Opinions. It's got a couple of lawyers who comment. Like the whole point of the podcast is about U.S. Supreme Court opinions and Court of Appeals decisions. And they were discussing this last week. I just listened to it today. And, you know, something that they pointed out was that it would have been wonderful if the court in the Felix Barnes case would have decided this officer created jeopardy, because that's what we're dealing with today.
Yeah.
Arguably.
Sure.
I mean,
sure.
and that's one of my minor points.
Yep.
Like, I think, like, what I would hang my hat on with a jury, just not to bury the lead, is that given what is necessary, you know, that he could have stepped to the side, and that given the action he took, that there is no universe in which he could have stopped her.
Sure.
Right? And so that to me says, like, it couldn't be reasonable, even if mistaken, simply because, like, a dude with his training, even I'm way less trained than him, and I know my handgun isn't stopping a car that's 2 feet away.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
And I totally understand your argument.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Nope. I get it. And I mean, I think it's a good argument. Again, this is where, you know, a jury would be the ones who ultimately make that decision. You know, I think they're both valid and reasonable arguments to make.
So the second point I make, and this might have two parts, is that Renee wasn't reasonably a threat. And the reason I say that is, like, with Officer Agent Ross's video as he's circling the car, we've got that sad dog, and I wonder what happened to that dog.
Oh, I know.
Right? Like, it's so...
Yeah.
Dogs are sad. Like, dead humans, not necessarily, but, like, dogs, come on. It was an old dog.
I've known a lot of cops who have a lot more sympathy for some of the animals we've dealt with than some of the people.
It's
like,
the John Wick thing, man. It's like,
yeah, man. Well, and it's like the animals are innocent. They don't know any better. People are the ones making dumb decisions. You know, I kind of feel the same way about kids, too. You know, having a couple of young kids, it's like, man, all kids are the same. They just want to play. They just want to have fun. They just want to, you know,
they don't know
attention.
when we're doing it wrong.
Man, but freaking adults, man. People can just be vile.
So I think with him walking around her car and her saying something to the effect of, like, I ain't mad at you, dude, like, a couple of times. And I know that her wife is talking at the same time. So, like, throughout all of this, again, my primary point is the previous one. But also, I think, given what we know he was at least exposed to, whether he was able to internalize or not, I mean...
Yeah.
I don't think it's sexist or racist to say that, like, middle-aged or younger white women are not the primary threat that face police. And I can say this, like, leave out the white, leave out the middle-aged. Dudes are the ones that are convicted of violent crimes.
Sure.
Mostly. Not exclusively.
No, yep.
But, like, when we're dealing with violent crimes, dudes are the threat.
Yeah.
I mean, I can demonstrate this by comparing our male prison population to our female prison population. The male population, like, exponentially dwarfs the female population. That's for people convicted, right? So either we're missing a whole lot of women who are like Ted Bundy, or women are less dangerous in this sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. That makes sense. No, I see what you're going with that. And I think maybe to some extent, based on the body language and things like that of the agents around the car, I think they probably maybe took that into account, or I don't think it was maybe a conscious thing that they were doing, but I will say, and this is maybe getting into the tactics, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about later about maybe that ICE does need to change how they're doing some of their operations and things like that.
To be clear, I think that comes from the top, not from any of these agents. I think it comes from Trump, Patel, Kristi Noem, etc.
Yep. Well, and even as a police officer, I can look at this and I can say, again, in hindsight, I can say, man, maybe we could use some better tactics, and maybe moving forward we should be using some better tactics, because honestly, like, as a police officer, I wouldn't feel real comfortable being in a lot of these situations that they're in for all sorts of reasons, okay? Not all of them being, maybe most of them not being a fault of their own. But anyways, they're kind of, I don't want to say nonchalantly, but they're kind of walking around the car and this and that. I don't think anyone is expecting her to throw the car in reverse and go. And
as you put in your original Facebook post, like a soccer mom, right?
Yeah. And I mean, that's something, a couple things go there. I think, so first of all, I think that's a valid point. And it's not racism, it's not sexism, but the reality is that, like, police officers make assessments based on totality of the circumstances. Who's in the car, what their age is, what the circumstances are, okay? And sometimes biases creep in there. I'm not going to deny that.
For sure.
Obviously, we try to keep those out. We try to always analyze things objectively. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point. That said, again, if this argument was being presented in court, I would pull out the cases where these white middle-aged soccer moms did do absolutely crazy stuff, and occasionally they do flip out the rails and and kill people and kill cops and stuff like that. And ultimately, the one thing I think that a lot of people don't understand or appreciate about being in law enforcement is, over the course of a career, you make thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of contacts. Even if 0.1% of the middle-aged white women you contact are the crazy ones, at some point you're gonna contact one of them, right? So even though this might seem as a lower threat, same thing with kids, stuff like that. 13-year-old kid, right? Most of them, 99.9% of them, are not going to give you trouble. But you always have to be prepared for that one that at some point is going to pop up. And I think it comes back a little bit to that brochure that you put on the front, the beginning of our podcast, which is, ICE can do this. There's a lot of information, and that type of stuff can obviously, get people injured and get people killed. So
that leads to my next 2 points, which I think are fairly covered in the totality of the circumstances analysis that is the current standard, right? And I think that was a big change when the Supreme Court announced that, at least in certain, I don't know if it was, so certain circuits had said it was the moment of threat analysis, and certain circuits didn't. I don't know where we were or where the Eighth Circuit was, but it's a big deal to have the U.S. Supreme Court decide that it's a totality of the circumstances rather than the moment of threat, right?
Well, yes and no, right? So it's interesting. So we, Wisconsin, I believe, were not one of the few courts that were kind of out there doing this moment of threat thing, okay? The standard, right, set by like Graham v. Connor, with 1989, has always been totality of the circumstances. So when this Barnes-Felix thing came out, all of a sudden everybody in law enforcement was like, whoa, okay, like, hey, we're taking note, like something's changing here. And then the Supreme Court makes the ruling and it goes back and we're like, oh, nothing's changed. It's still totality of the circumstances.
Here at least, maybe in other circuits.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would say that they were able to get away with more. I don't know if that's the best way to put it.
Sure.
But at least for most of us, or I would even say people working on the federal level, the national level, they kind of looked at this and was like, this is the way it's always been. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because people say, well, are you doing training now on, I think you asked me this, are you doing training now on officer-created jeopardy?
Yes.
And I thought about it, and honestly, the truth is, we've been training officer-created jeopardy for 20 years. As long as I've been in law enforcement, we didn't call it that. We just called it, don't step in front of the car, you frickin' idiot, because you don't want to get killed, right? So I think now it's just more acknowledging that, hey, there are certain mistakes or bad decisions you can make that will, negate your self-defense claim. I also think it's important to say, though, that that doesn't mean officers have to be infallible. It doesn't mean they can't make mistakes. It doesn't mean they can't make errors in judgment, when they can articulate, hey, this is why I did this. Or, I didn't step out of the way because of X, Y, or Z. I didn't think it would work, or I didn't think, this or that. So I just think it's important that people understand that, too. It doesn't mean officers can't make mistakes, right?
And another caveat just for today, in order for me to avoid any libel or slander claims,
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, I've been a prosecutor, given the information I have, nothing more or less, I would feel comfortable charging this dude with homicide. What degree of homicide is probably going to be up to the jury. Like, I could see an imperfect self-defense claim.
Yep.
And also, there are things that you and I just don't know. Like, Agent Ross has made a statement, and we don't have access to that, right? So, all of this, I mean, I think that the reason you and I agree to do this, in both of our professional capacities, is because we see a lot of tumult going on, right? And even though we're going to end up disagreeing, there's a reasonable way to go about this, in order to ascertain, like, where do we go from here? And I think that's what reaches the broader questions. I think so. Like, you just kind of hinted at the two minor points I want to bring up before I tie up the best form of my case with necessary, right?
Sure. Yep.
And my argument isn't completely contingent on this, but I think it helps, and that's that I don't think that Renee certainly committed any federal crime in their presence, even if she was blocking the road and honking for 3 minutes. And the reason I say that is because there's a knowledge requirement to that offense that says that she knew that ICE was acting in their official capacity. And I'll tell you, as like, as a dude on Team Renee, as a dude on Team Fuck with ICE, the reason we're on that team is because we believe they're not acting lawfully. Like, we think that they're going in excess. And I'll just point to this will probably come around when we discuss, like, the broader politics.
Yeah.
There are these things, I mean, it was especially relevant with the National Guard, where they're deployed in, like, LA and whatnot, where they're essentially presence patrols, right?
Sure. Yep.
You were in the military? Is
No,
that true?
no, I was
You
not.
weren't.
Nope.
Someone in Performance on Demand was.
Both Mike and Pete had served. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that's where I was conflating y'all. So, presence patrols are basically when there's not an objective for the unit, but you're going through the streets of the town, whatever area, in order to demonstrate that you're there. I mean, you guys do that as cops, right? I mean, that's the whole reason you leave the unmarked cars. I'm sorry, not
the marked cars.
The marked cars. Uninhabited in a median.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Because you want people to think you're there. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, or just driving around. I mean, there's
But your presence discourages
absolutely.
crime.
There's studies that show that, right? That when a police car drives through a neighborhood for a certain amount of time, again, I'm simplifying, but yeah, there's a deterrent effect there.
So, I'll get to that on the, like, more to the presence patrols on the broader thing, but I think that Renee's apprehension, and I'm just guessing, I don't know, and that's why it's not critical of my argument, is that, in determining whether she committed a federal crime in the presence of an ICE agent, she would have to know that they were doing something lawful. That, like, they were seeking to apprehend Inigo Montoya, and they had a valid warrant for, and I don't know if they could show that. The other point, and again, I get that it's relatively minor, it's subsidiary to both the other points, is that the cops in this case, and I mean the driver of the SUV, not Agent Ross, although I feel like we can talk about this a bit. You gotta discuss the three cops in context as a team. I don't know.
Sure.
So, like, they weren't acting lawfully in terms of the Code of Federal Regulations, where it says that when it's safe, and it was safe at that point for them to, like, when they stepped out of the car, it was safe for them to say, I'm an ICE agent, I'm authorized to make an arrest, I'm placing you under arrest for the crime of obstruction.
Sure.
Like, in as much time as it took him to say, get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the fucking car,
Yeah.
he definitely could have said that. And so it's a subsidiary point.
Sure.
My whole thing doesn't hang on that.
Yeah.
But I think it's persuasive that, like, they weren't doing it right.
I
So-
think that's pretty fair. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I mean, you might know better than I. Is there any...
Well, let me cover the thing.
We
Yeah.
talked about cops swearing yesterday.
Sure,
Right?
yeah,
Is there any
yep.
case law that you're aware of that says, like, even if we're doing it wrong, it's fine?
Yeah. Yes and no. So first of all, well, let me cover the part that I agree with, and that is, I think the communication could be a lot clearer, and I think that's something that
You said that yesterday, too.
yeah, as a law enforcement instructor, that's something we're always trying to improve, right? Clarity of communication. Okay. Even if they weren't sure they wanted to arrest her at that point, they have lawful authority to have her exit the car, which I argue they do. They can say, ma'am, you're being detained. You need to step out of the car. Put the car in park. Step out of the car now. If you don't, you will be arrested, right? And that's where, again, I think sometimes the emotion of the moment, I'm sure they're frustrated. They've been being yelled at and screamed at and all this, and they've been running around trying to get around this woman and this and that. They get frustrated, so they're like, get out of the car, get the F out of the car, okay? And it's not very clear communication. Does that, again, push them into the, that their actions are criminal? I still think they were giving lawful commands, even if they weren't clear. But I can empathize, and again, coming into more of a civil aspect, I can understand that maybe there's an argument there to say, hey, they weren't giving her clear commands, so, whatever. As to, acting in their official capacity, I tend to disagree with that one. I think, they're on duty. I don't think at that point it matters if they're driving back to their station from lunch, right? Or if they are actively pursuing somebody. I do think one makes them more egregious or more dangerous, but ultimately they're on duty. They're in uniform. They're in squad cars that have got all sorts of lights and sirens, whether they're marked or unmarked. And there's precedent. There's rules that say they can use unmarked cars equipped with certain light packages and stuff like that. They have a job to do. They're getting paid by our taxpayers. As a taxpayer, if I'm paying them to do the job, I want them to do their job. Is kind of the flip argument of that. I understand the opinion that hey, I don't think it's legitimate and we should be obstructing it. Other people have the opinion of they're doing their job as they're supposed to do it, and I want them doing their job when I'm paying them. So I think acting in the official capacity, what I have seen, and I can't quote any case law or things like that, but I know I've seen some cases that were qualified immunity cases where I saw officers do some pretty far out stuff there, and I was surprised that the court still said that's still part of their duties, right? Maybe to a point where I personally didn't agree with it,
Right.
but I know I've seen some cases, and again, I'd have to do some digging, but
So, two things there.
Yeah.
One, in an area that I wanted to push back on you because I acknowledged yesterday that, they don't need to have... Cops don't need to be right.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So, and this might actually be both points. There's a case, Hind versus North Carolina, which essentially says cops can make a mistake that is a mistake of law.
sure.
Right?
Yep.
Previous to that, there was, if cops make a mistake of fact, we're not going to suppress evidence. If they make a mistake of law, no, we're going to
Sure.
suppress that
Yeah.
evidence.
Yep.
So, interesting nerd note, the
Okay.
Wisconsin Supreme Court, in a very similar case, had decided that when a cop makes a mistake of law, they're going to toss the evidence. The Fourth Amendment, we're going to do this to dissuade police misconduct.
Yep.
The U.S. Supreme Court, in a decision authored by Chief Justice Roberts, said, no, a cop making a reasonable mistake of law is the same as a cop making a reasonable mistake of fact. So
Interesting.
if a cop sees one of those tail lights that has 100 LEDs and 5 of them are out, in fact, that's fine.
Sure.
Under DMV rules, right?
Yep.
But if the cop thinks it's illegal, that's a reasonable mistake of law, and so he pulls that over, and we're not going to suppress that evidence.
Okay.
Because that was a reasonable mistake of law, even though it was mistaken. And it actually was 2 points. The other point I wanted to push back on just a little is,
Yeah.
We're talking about a lot of these in terms of when you say they have a civil case, and
Yeah.
I think almost axiomatically in terms of a 42 U.S.C. 1983 claim,
Mm-hmm.
which says you denied me my civil rights when you were acting in your capacity as a government
yeah.
agent.
Yep.
I don't see as sharp a distinction between those civil cases and what it means for these criminal cases. I think that they sort
Sure.
of
Yeah.
collapse in on each other in the sense that it's like if there's a big dog upstairs, they collapse in on each other in the sense that like if there's something that the cops did where they can conceivably be held liable civilly,
Yep.
that means that we all expect you to be trained
Mhm.
to not do that thing,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
And so I readily acknowledge that they're not identical standards, but I think that in as much as I'm characterizing it as pushback, I'm saying like if there's been a civil case where we've said like the cops did it wrong,
Yeah.
y'all ought to like not do that. Does
Sure.
that make sense?
Yeah, no, I can understand that. And again, from a training perspective, I would agree. I would say, hey, you know, that's a standard we should be holding ourselves to. I would say that, you know, in my experience, I've seen more of the civil cases being things like you didn't use the best tactics. You didn't, our policies said this and you followed it kind of, but you kind of didn't follow part of it. Maybe you have a reason, maybe you don't, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, I agree to an extent, I guess, with that, you know.
Yeah.
So,
before we move, I mean, I
Yeah.
think there's two more parts of the conversation. What I have them listed on my outline is, again, this is real partisan.
Sure.
I called it police privilege. And then part 3 was war on America.
okay, all right.
But just to wrap up this individual instance of
Yeah.
Agent Ross versus,
Mhm.
Renee Good,
Yeah.
what I would hound as a prosecutor, and I said this before, I'm going to bring it home, is in addition to there's no way any amount of his handgun rounds could have stopped her.
Sure, yep.
The necessary component, like the force was necessary in order to
Yep.
stop her unlawful interference with him or her assault on him or whatever. That necessary would entail ruling out other options like stepping to the right.
Sure.
And I feel like a dick for saying it that bluntly.
No, it's
but
fine.
it's like the dude, all I had to do is step to the right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we discussed yesterday, I think, how neuroscience indicates that Agent Ross didn't really make a decision.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like he acted. I mean, so that's the best form of my argument.
Sure.
And I guess aside from that, I'm just gonna say like if this dude his draw time was remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the impression I'm coming away with, feel free to correct me on this, like he seems trigger happy to me. Like to react like that quickly
Yeah.
to that kind of a threat just seems like he's trained to the point of muscle memory where it's like
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with that. So I'm trying to think. There's a couple things here. So, well, first of all, let's go the first part of kind of your argument. Necessary, right? I think it's real easy, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit before. I think it's real easy for us to sit here and look at the video and say it wasn't necessary, right? Because she
100%.
missed him, right? Necessary is going to be judged at that moment, and is going to be judged from his perspective. I'll draw a parallel to some castle doctrine laws. Some of the states have, stand your ground laws, and they talk
Real
about
similar, right?
duty to retreat. And in fact, Wisconsin retreating for a civilian self-defense, it is considered among the totality of the circumstances. Some states have a specific clause in their statutes that say, if you can retreat or withdraw, you shall do so. None of the states in the country require you to retreat unless you can do so with absolute certainty.
okay.
So here's the thing, and it's something that is in law enforcement training, certainly in our state, and I'm sure other states too. It's that when we start thinking about what are my other alternatives, okay, those other alternatives to deadly force, okay, they don't have to be attempted if, well, number one, if they have been attempted and have been exhausted, they've failed, or two, the officer does not reasonably believe that they would be effective at that time.
Okay.
So based on his...
Say that one more time for me, please.
So, okay, so when we talk about, in our state we call it preclusion, right? Deadly force must be precluded by, or basically saying that you can only use deadly force unless, you can only use deadly force if lesser degrees of force, right, have failed, or you reasonably believe that they would be ineffective. Okay.
Okay.
So for instance, you start stabbing me with your pen in the face. Okay. I don't have to like pull out my pepper spray because it's pretty reasonable for me to believe that like my pepper spray is not going to stop you from stabbing me in the face, right? I don't need to try that. I can just shoot you. Okay. So again,
I still hope you wouldn't.
no, well, I hope you wouldn't stab me in the face. I don't think you would, but we'll see if we can't agree on how this debate or this discussion goes. It might come to that.
I haven't seen any printing on you. But
So anyways, what I'm getting at is this is the part where it comes down to his statement, right? So if he totally, thing that could totally destroy my argument would be if he's like, yeah, I realized I could have stepped to the side, but I didn't.
okay.
Like, I mean, I think that torpedoes his self-defense claim. Or of course, if he's like, I was just so pissed at this bitch that I, finally had it and I shot her, right? Obviously, he's probably not going to say something like that.
Right.
But again, I think there are some articulable things on the video too. I could argue. My argument would be, hey, her wheels were pointed this way. You want him to step to the right? Well, the only time her wheels went back was right when she gunned it. He had a few hundredths of a second to perceive that. So, he thought he was probably safer over here, and now she turns and goes this way. Well, it didn't make sense for him a few hundredths of a second ago to step to the right, and by then it was too late. So
Right.
I'm just going to come back and I'm going to say, in that moment when he made that decision, he didn't believe it was reasonable to move to the side. That's how I would try to counter that, and ultimately that'd be up to a jury. And then the other point, I'm trying to remember, what was the, you mentioned something else there too. Unless you wanted to talk more about that.
I did not
Okay.
on that one. I mean, for me, that concludes. I mean, I think it's the best form of both the arguments.
Yeah.
Like, what I'm going to hang my hat on is he couldn't have stopped her with his gun.
Yeah.
And what you're hanging your hat on, if I understand correctly, is he reasonably believed she was a threat of death or great bodily harm, and if anything could stop her, it would be that.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So the next two parts that I wanted to discuss, and this is great. I mean, we've got about 15, 20 minutes yet.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yep. No problem.
Again, thanks so much for coming back today.
Yeah, you bet, man. That's fun.
So I've got this one titled Police Privilege, and I think it relates to like who we give the benefit of the doubt to.
Sure.
And I'm talking more broadly, right? Like we talked a little bit before we started the recording here. I love you and your wife, and I love America, right?
Yeah.
So I'm out there protesting. I'm not necessarily an educated person in all the nuances of law. You and your wife, who's also a cop, have signed up for the job, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So like, as trained people who are getting paid to enforce the laws, why should you get the benefit of the doubt over someone like me or Renee?
Sure.
Like I don't believe she did.
Yeah.
I don't believe that she believes she is doing anything wrong, whether
Sure.
ultimately she was or not.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I've got questions about that, and I don't know that anyone could have known it in that moment.
Sure.
We've explored that a lot. So
Yeah.
like, I feel like you and I have somewhat been talking past each other when I said, oh, if it were carjackers, like it would be different. And
Yep.
your response is like, they were effecting a lawful arrest.
Sure.
And so all this is ultimately, in my view, going to end up with like why Trump sucks for
Sure.
ordering ICE to do this as part of the unitary executive. But
Yep.
I suspect you're going to be resisting this idea. In my esteem, when Agent Ross started drawing his gun, Renee had a reasonable fear of death or great bodily harm. And I think that she would have been privileged under self-defense to run his ass down and kill him. I suspect you disagree, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I suspect that the disagreement isn't going to be because of the moment of threat.
Sure.
It's going to be because of he's a cop.
Sure.
So if you could spin off that for a while, that's my overall point. When I understand, when I'm talking about cop privilege, what I'm saying is you're inclined to give the cops the benefit of the doubt, whereas citizens exercising their rights are less trained and not getting that benefit.
So I think it comes down. I think it comes down to reasonableness here. Okay, again, that magic word. These guys are federal law enforcement officers. They are acting in their official capacity. Whether you agree with that politically or not, I think that's a separate issue than what the law says. I will also say that I think ignorance of the law is not a defense against violating it. So if she...
I'm just going to be a dick for a second.
No, please do. Please do.
For citizens. For cops it is.
Okay. Okay. All right. I see what you did there. Touche. Yeah. So, so like, just because she personally believed, and this is where, I tell people, I'm like, are we thinking or are we feeling? I think she was feeling in the moment. I don't think she was thinking.
She believed they were Nazis.
Yeah.
Like, is that where we're going?
Yeah, well, I mean, to an extent, right? Kind of, right? I don't think that it's a reasonable belief for her at that time. She's obstructing, she's committing, in my opinion, a crime. She's obstructing law enforcement officers. When you are committing a crime, depending on the crime, you may sometimes lose your right to self-defense. If you are endangering other people, you can forfeit your right to self-defense unless you do certain things to reestablish that right. And then the other thing I'll say is, okay, like, they're walking up to her and they're telling her to get out of the car. They're not pointing guns at her, right? They're not throwing her on the ground and beating her, okay? Like, they're telling her, they're giving her a lawful command, in my opinion, to step out of the car.
In fairness, I don't want to push back on this too hard, but they're angry, they're yelling.
Okay.
There's get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the fucking car.
Yep.
And like the dude ain't calm.
Yep.
The driver. I mean, the other dude is like, ma'am, and this is where the conflicting orders might come in.
Yep.
So look, in terms of steel manning each other's arguments, I want to. I think we're both committed to being as gracious with each other with the facts as we can, and conceding everything we can.
Yep.
And what I think it comes down to that's nonetheless frustrating for me is, like you had said yesterday, that she'd inserted herself into the situation.
Yep.
And I understand. I accept that. I don't know Agent Ross personally. My complaints are going to be about Kristi Noem and Trump for inserting ICE in cities where they're not wanted, and where their conduct isn't the way things are normally done. Right. So this disparateness is what bothers me, and I'm for this podcast, this is the only, like, I can think about this and add an addendum later. I probably won't, but like if it occurs to me, like, oh, here's the problem with Adrian's argument. So like this is your chance though, like in terms of that disparity between like who gets the benefit of the doubt, the cops or the citizens? Why is it the cops who have more training and more experience in dealing with this?
Well, I think to an extent, it kind of comes down to the societal contract thing, right? We live in an organized society. And because of that, like, your average citizen, in order to reap the benefits, okay, to experience the benefits of living in an organized society where you, for the most part, don't have to worry about your neighbor kicking in your door and stealing your stereo and killing you in the middle of the night, because we have laws and law enforcement, you give up some of your rights. You do, some of your freedoms at least, right? I can't just go shoot a gun off in the parking lot right now because we have certain laws, and that's part of living in an organized society. So because of that, and again, I'm a bit of a pirate myself. As I said, I'm a bit of a libertarian myself. There comes a point where you have to acknowledge that we send these people out there, law enforcement officers, to maintain order in society. And because of that, if you act in a manner that endangers that, okay, in an antisocial, illegal behavior, there are consequences for that. Now, when it comes to benefit of the doubt, I mean, how officers are treated after a shooting investigation versus how citizens are treated. Yeah, I mean, I can acknowledge that that's a thing. They are treated differently, not necessarily because of the law, but because of experience and procedure and stuff like that. But as for like her, thinking that her life was in danger versus them thinking their life was in danger, I've seen that argument made. I've seen some cases where I think it could be reasonable. I don't think this is one of them. I think this is a case, again, where, the crux of my argument is, even if she thought she was doing the right thing, okay, she inserted herself into that situation. She found them out. They weren't looking for her. She blocked them for 3 minutes. She obstructed their investigation. They gave her multiple opportunities to leave, even before they walked up to the car. They had lights and sirens on. They told her to exit the car. And then, again, maybe not intentionally, but very recklessly, she escalated her behavior. And she basically was resisting arrest at that point, which is something that, it goes into consideration when we look at like Graham v. Connor. That's something that case lays out about, reasonableness of use of force too. So that's the crux of my argument. I would make the argument too if I was a prosecutor in your shoes too, but in my opinion, I don't think it's reasonable at that point.
So we just blazed through what I had as number 2 in my argument, and that's great. I mean,
cool.
I think that we hit like
Yeah.
all the relevant points, and I mean, I hear you. I just agree with you.
Sure.
I hope that I don't need to put any finer point on it.
Yeah.
I'll watch the video and we'll see, right?
Yeah.
So the last place I wanted to end up is, it's hard for me, in light of anyone who watches news for the past half a year,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which I think would include any ICE agents, Agent Ross, the dude who's driving the car,
Sure.
etc. Like, I think that the overall environment of what we're doing in the country, how do I phrase this? Essentially, my thesis here is that Trump is succeeding in using ICE like it's never been used before.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
In terms of doing presence patrols, in terms of making a media splash
Mm-hmm.
with things, and so, what I would point to in terms of specific objectionable pronouncements of his is in Chicago. There was the whole Chicago's going to find out why it's called the Department of War, right? With war all capitalized.
Yep.
That when he called his generals together, with Hegseth, and then he spoke to them.
Sure.
He had suggested to the generals that American cities were training grounds to fight the enemy within.
Mm-hmm.
And to be clear about this, I'm the enemy within.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, we're sitting across from each other right now. When we discussed it yesterday, I'm like, I don't want to shoot at you. I don't think you want to shoot at me either.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
And yet the president is setting up this scenario in which I'm the enemy. I'm the dude that the military is supposed to put down because I'm going to exercise my First Amendment rights and go out there and tell ICE to fuck off.
Yep.
So I guess to the extent that you'd acknowledge that even if it was hitting mute,
Sure.
You had voted for Trump, you were for his policies rather, not for his bluster.
No,
right?
he's an asshole. I mean, there's no other good way to put it. I mean,
so like what I'm suggesting here, I want to be clear about it, is that Renee's death is on Trump's shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I would prosecute Agent Ross for carrying out Trump's orders.
Yep.
I think that Trump is doing it in a way which is just entirely unethical,
Sure.
and not something we should support. So I guess, like, as a dude who was considering immigration when you voted for him, what is your take on that?
Honestly, my take on it is that we're all a bunch of pawns. You, me, Renee, the agent, all of this. Like, it's all bullshit, man. If I'm gonna let go of the reins and like lose my cool a little bit here, maybe it'll keep people from watching for a few more minutes here. Like none of this is real. It feels like to me, it's just all theatrics. And I know you feel like you were like, I feel like I'm the enemy. Well, like, dude, welcome to the club, man. Like, as a white male conservative, people have been, referring to people like me as degenerate, Nazis, fascists, things like that for years, right?
Basket of deplorables.
Yeah, basket of deplorables, right? It's fucking absurd. And what has caused the country to get to that point? I've got some theories. I don't know if I want to talk about them on camera right now, but
I wish you would.
Yeah, I know.
You're employed by other people.
Yeah, exactly. I got to think about it a little bit here. I'd have to think about it. But I mean, and I'm not going to point fingers at like one party or another. Do I think that both parties here, Trump as well as liberals or Democrats or this or that, have some virtuous ideas or virtuous things that they're trying to do? Yeah, I absolutely do. But I think that they've been so corrupted in the last decade, in the last 20 years by politics and the power struggle and money, both parties, that, it's just, it completely taints anything they're trying to do, right? So, like we talk about immigration, right? So for me, I can understand the compassion argument that people from different countries are coming here and they're trying to find a better life. Hell, I would too if I lived in Venezuela, okay, or Mexico or this.
Yeah.
I would want to bring my family up here too, and I'd probably do whatever I possibly could to do it. I can empathize with that. At the same time, I also understand that we're a sovereign nation, and a sovereign nation needs to have borders to exist. It's not a nation without some type of borders there. But at the crux of the issue, let's look at two things here, right? Voter ID, okay? Republicans, conservatives say voter ID is to prevent fraud. Democrats, liberals say it's to suppress votes, right? Are both probably right to an degree, a certain extent? Probably. I will totally acknowledge that, we have had voter suppression in this country, a history of it, right? That's not debatable. It's happened in this country. I will also acknowledge that, and I think we may be talking on the break about this, poor people tend to move more frequently, so it's harder for them to update IDs and stuff like that. I totally acknowledge that, okay? At the same time, again, there's trade-offs when it comes to ensuring election integrity. Now, let's talk about the immigration thing, okay? Why are we letting all these people across the border? Why did Biden let all these people across the border? Well, was it out of, goodness of his heart that he wants to help other people? Or is it that because some people think in the long term, those people will become U.S. citizens, they're going to move to urban areas, they're going to be lower income people, and they're going to vote for Democrats?
And incidentally, even if they don't, this is something that I struggle with. Whether you're a legal immigrant, a citizen, a prisoner, what have you, appropriation in the House of Representatives.
Yes.
And I will fact check myself before I post this, but appropriation in the House of Representatives has to do with the number of people in your area, not the number of people legally in your area, not the number of people that can vote.
That's my understanding.
So, to be clear, I don't agree with the conservative talking points on it, but I was pretty surprised to find out that appropriation in the House of Representatives had to do with how many people were there, not how many people were legally there. Yeah. And I'm not sure how much it matters, but it's to say I want to find common ground, and I take your point.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not just a talking point. This is something that ought to be seriously discussed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think people gloss over it because, number one, I think it makes them feel better about themselves. Everybody wants the moral high ground today, right? Everybody wants to think that they're, no, my party isn't trying to manipulate the system and gain more votes and gain more power, right? Bullshit. They both are. They both are. And the problem that I get is that, the whole ends justify the means thing. It's like, well, we're doing it because it's better for our country. Bullshit. Like, I've always been a believer that the institution, the process, like our election process, having a fair and transparent election is more important than who wins. I 100% believe that.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't have that fair, transparent process, then I mean, what's the point? The process is more important than the outcome, in my opinion, and that's not just politics. In my opinion, that's life, everything.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't find any basis for disagreement in terms of process being more important than the outcome. I mean, it's if we're gonna play a game, we gotta have rules, and I don't mean to diminish it like that. I just mean like in terms of fairness. Fuck games. If we're gonna have a duel, it's got to be 10 paces for both of us.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
So just how does that, in your view,
Yeah.
how does that relate to the legitimacy of what Trump, or the illegitimacy?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you're of the opinion that he is screwing the pooch or that he's doing it right.
I think the rhetoric and all of that stuff is out of control, and I think that has always been that way with Trump, and that's probably the thing that I like the least about him, because I actually think he's a pretty intelligent guy, and I do think that deep down that, again, he has a belief that he's doing the right thing and he's doing what's best for the country, but I do think he's very egotistical and arrogant, and I think he's also a master kind of manipulator, and I think he's going to use the language and the things like that are going to get people fired up on his side, just like I think, liberals do the same thing, right? Yeah. So I have a problem with that. I really wish, and I wished after the first term or during the first term that, like, people said he's like not very presidential, and I think you make the same argument about Biden for different reasons. But it's like, I wish.
Actually, yeah.
I think probably damn near every American feels like that. I wish we could have somebody who is calm, who is more stoic, who is in control and can discuss things logically, and even if they disagree, can acknowledge that, and then kind of an old school statesman, so to speak, right? Yeah. So. That's the biggest issue I have with Trump. Now, when it comes to like how ICE is and thing, like, number one, criminal deportations, criminal aliens, people who've come to this country illegally and committed crimes, especially violent crimes. Why the hell are we paying for them to be in our own prisons, number one? And number two, why do we want them here? Like, why do you want a rapist or a murderer or a drug trafficker living down the hallway? Like, frankly, we have enough U.S. citizens who are doing that kind of crap already. We don't need people from other countries doing that. So the whole idea of deporting those type of people, I'm 100% in favor for. I mean, personally, I don't, and maybe you can, I'm open-minded, but I don't understand why anybody would be against that. I can concede that we do have some people in this country, and maybe a lot of people in this country, who have come here, they have families, they have established roots, and they work really hard. I mean, I'll be honest with you, probably, most of the average, like, Hispanic men that I, stop or come into contact with, man, a lot of them are working really hard. They're working 3 jobs, they're busting their ass, just like I said. If I was from one of those countries, I would want the best for my family. I can totally understand that. So I can empathize with that. At the same time, like, what's the recourse? I don't want to break up families. I don't want to just, send people back. But at the same time, like, especially when we didn't have our border secured, we can't talk about a pathway to citizenship while we just have people, like, flooding over the border. And
for sure,
that was my biggest, problem with the last administration. It's like they're all talking about, what are we going to do to, get these people citizenship or legal status. It's like you have to stop the flow first. And I would say that they purposely did not want to do that from what I saw, because they could have. I mean, I think the border's been much more secure under this last administration. So I mean, and as for the tactics and this and that and how you go about doing it, I definitely I think I mentioned during a break to you, like, man, I wouldn't want to be kind of running around necessarily the way that those ICE guys are. I think there's safer ways to do it. But I also understand that there's some limitations when it comes to resources and time and stuff like that. Like, you don't always get to do the job the way you want to do it or the best way. So I don't have a clear answer, I guess. At the end of the day, it's something that needs to be done, but man, I don't know that the way we're doing it is best, but I don't know if there's a better way.
Yeah, no, I appreciate absolutely all that. And I mean, I gotta say, like, this is where maybe a majority of Democrats are gonna disagree with me. I mean, like I said, I'm an independent. I believe I've voted for Democrats for like the past couple of decades.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
I voted for W the first time.
Okay.
Yep. Different podcast. But that said, like, I've voted for candidates of both major parties.
Yep.
And I don't know that my party is going to agree with me in agreeing with what you just said.
Sure.
I mean, I absolutely agree that we can't have open borders.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree that Biden and by virtue of that, Kamala handled the southern border atrociously. I think that's been handled in terms of just folks aren't coming across like they did.
Yep.
And so, in you can absolutely end it where you want. Where I would want to end it is in terms of what the Trump administration is doing to get folks out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess my contention is that the way to do it is boring, right? The way we should be doing it is boring.
Sure.
It should be the way. I'm not saying like we've always been doing it. We can absolutely accord more resources to it. And when we talk about how to effectively get this solved, the judges, and I put that in air quotes because they're not Article 3 judges.
Okay.
They're judges that are given the title judge by the executive.
Sure.
They're the ones that sign the administrative warrants.
Gotcha.
You can hire, 1,000 of them that serve at the pleasure of the president. He can fire them at a moment's notice.
Okay.
They don't exercise any independent authority.
Sure.
And you can clear your backlog of immigrants in a matter of months.
Yeah.
It'd be super boring, and it would solve the problem, right?
Interesting. Okay.
So I think, like, in terms of, like, what I see with is Chicago's going to find out why it's called the Department of War, and these are training grounds for our military. I see an intentional escalation when he's sending, he successfully sent troops in, National Guard troops into LA
Sure.
in order to buttress ICE. And then when he tried to do the same with Chicago, the U.S. Supreme Court backed up the Seventh Circuit and saying, like, that's not how you get to do it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There are other avenues, like maybe he's going to do Insurrection Act, etc.
Sure.
And again, what it comes down to for me is I don't want to be shooting at you.
Yeah.
A, because I have affection for you, and B, because you've got a faster draw time. Right?
Sure.
So, I mean, I think, like, what I would hope, and let me just caveat with this, like, what I attempt to do, like in the first episode of this, with pointing out that ICE poster that was just ludicrous.
Yep.
Like saying ICE doesn't have any authority over U.S. citizens. Like, yeah, they fucking do. Like, they can arrest you if you commit a crime in their presence. Certain crimes, right?
Sure.
And also, as we discussed today, like, they get to be wrong, and unless you're faster on the draw than them, like, you know.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm doing what I can with my party, with people on my side of things, to say, like, don't, or chill out, or do it better. I guess my ask of folks on your side would be, would you join? The Trump administration isn't going to listen to me.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm grouped together with the blue-haired lesbians who've been yelling that they're Nazis since, like, 2016.
Sure. Yep.
So my ask to you, and like you don't have to commit to it now, but just like my final point would be, I would hope the folks in your situation would recognize that, like, in my view, this situation is something that was demanded by Trump.
Sure.
And that everything that we've discussed is just evidence that, legal or not, like, it's not working, man.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah, there's a lot of theater involved. You know, it's a lot of theatrics, and I agree. Yeah, it's not working. You know, I think the best way that people can do that is to, you know, have discussions like this, keep talking, keep an open mind, and again, like, you know, I kind of bring up the thinking versus feeling. Like, let's make sure thinking requires you to question your own beliefs, right? And to really, you know, self-reflect and examine, like, man, am I in the right here? Or am I, you know, is my thinking logical? Or am I just reacting because I feel emotional about something? I think it is absolutely, I mean, I think really what the appeal is that people who are maybe a little bit more moderate, like, kind of just says, hey guys, like, let's just pause for a moment and think about this, right?
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about it before we fly off the handle. And you know, it's heartbreaking every time you go on social media and you see people just back and forth with just knee-jerk reactions.
Especially when it's fucking wrong and it's going to get someone hurt.
Man, exactly. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yep, yeah. And I mean, and again, I've seen it on both sides. I mean,
we talked about the
you know,
instance on my side,
Yeah,
where it's like,
yeah.
ICE doesn't have authority. Like, that's going to get someone killed if it
Yep.
hasn't already.
Yep.
If Renee
Yep.
didn't see that, like, that's the sort of shit that
I
would
mean,
get her killed.
I'm going to throw out the thing that I know is, you know, big for people on the left is the January 6th thing. Look how many people got jammed up on that because they got caught up in this fervor and they, you know, frickin' went storming into the Capitol. Like, you know, people wound up, I know most of them all got pardoned, but they wound up doing some prison time, you know? Like, it's dumb. You know, personally, I would love to be more activist and try to get people more to listen and this and that. I have to say I'm a little burned out, you know, to the point where, you know, I enjoy talking with you because you're somebody who will challenge, you know, my thinking and stuff like that. Like we can talk about this stuff and I think we do agree on a lot of stuff, but we also will challenge each other. So I think it's important for people to find someone like that. But, you know, at the same time, some people have been like, Adrian, you should do your, you know, video analysis and put this out there and this and that. I'll be honest with you, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know if it's worth my time. You know, it's like, for me, focusing on my family, focusing on my work. Again, I've been kind of going down this stoic journey, this stoic path for a while now, and for me, it's a lot about what is within my sphere of control. You know,
Yeah,
and then
for sure.
And then the big thing is, I have the power to not react to things. People get offended, people get angry. That is a choice you make, right? And sometimes somebody does something to you and you immediately feel that adrenaline dump. It's a fight or flight thing, right? You feel angry. The only reason you stay angry for hours and hours and hours is because you keep thinking about it. The chemicals in your body, they're flushed in 90 seconds.
100%.
So that's what I would encourage people to do, is be aware of your own feelings, be aware of your own emotions, understand that you have the power not to react to this stuff. And you know, if you see something like this and you know, you think that the ICE agent murdered her, or you think she was a terrorist who was trying to run, you're going to see what you want to see, right? But if you can just pause for a minute and be like, you know what, I have the power not to have an opinion, at least for a little bit, I think that's a good first step for most people. So.
Absolutely agree. I mean, that's a fundamental, like, different language, but that's mindfulness, right? Like, just recognizing that, like, you're living in the moment, and this stuff that you're perseverating on isn't a present threat. Like, I can get totally worked up about Trump at a moment's notice, but the fact is, you and I are sitting here in the studio, right?
Yeah.
That's not a present threat.
Exactly. Yeah.
When I'd forecasted this, I said 2 or 3 times, we've done 2. Again, thank you so much for coming back. You got to be at work in 7 minutes.
No, well, that's just when I need to be out the door. I got a few minutes, but yeah.
So, like, I could see another one where we're talking about, you know, we dipped a little bit into it today, but, like, civil disobedience and What's of particular interest to me is resisting unlawful arrest.
Sure.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
Yep.
there's an argument that whether Renee knows about the law or not, that she could have been doing that.
Sure.
And in Wisconsin, the right to resist unlawful arrest in the absence of unreasonable force has been abrogated, which leaves open resisting unlawful arrest
Sure.
when y'all are acting
Yeah.
with unreasonable
Sure.
force.
Absolutely. Yep.
Throw down, man.
I like it. I like it.
So,
Yeah.
like, I would love to. I mean, if it's okay with you, I'm going to get this stuff up within a couple days to make
Sounds
sure
great.
that it's like fresh and something
Yeah.
in this, like, to make sure we don't invade Greenland and.
yeah. There's a
Sorry, parting shot.
Yes. Fair enough, man. Yeah, I like it.
Any last notes?
No, I think I covered it. I just like I said, it's fun talking with you. I think it's fun talking with someone who, again, can have a good logical, discussion and challenge my own thoughts. And I hope I challenged yours a little bit too,
No,
and
and
encourage other people to do the same.
Yeah, thank you so much for like
Yeah.
keeping it real. And again, like, you've been an expert for the defense and the prosecution. I don't believe that you're coming at this from a partisan perspective.
Yeah.
I do believe a little bit that you're partisan to police.
Probably.
Because,
Oh, sure. I think
your
that's
wife.
fair. Yeah.
Um,
Yep. I mean,
and
I
also,
can.
like, we talked about it.
I can see myself in that person's shoes.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm sure you could potentially see yourself in Renee's shoes.
Absolutely.
So, and honestly, I could see myself in Renee's shoes in a different manner, maybe when I was 20 years younger. Right? So,
100%.
I used to be hardcore liberal for what it's worth too, way back
Really?
in the day. Oh yeah. Yeah,
Well,
man.
we've gotta do
yeah,
more
man.
podcasts
Yeah.
now.
We could talk. I think it'd be fun to actually just talk about political philosophies and things that we've changes we've gone through over the years and things like that.
That'd be great.
I actually think people should consider philosophy a little bit more because it really shapes